Hello and welcome, guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. This is Affinity, Chaos. Chapter 891. Eva stared at Gray, unsure of what to say. Gray took a glance at her but moved away, walking in Alec's direction. "Did you say Nathan was in Kang's city?" he asked. Alec nodded. He didn't know what transpired between Gray and Eva, but from her present facial expression, she could tell that it wasn't anything good. "I'll be leaving soon. We'll see some other time." Gray didn't dally any longer and left with Void. Alec walked up to Eva to ask her what was wrong. She told him about what happened and how Gray was able to guess everything that happened. If not for the fact that she was certain that he was unconscious at that time, she would have never believed he wasn't present at the time. His guess was spot on. Other than the fact that some people saw Gray first before she and Nathan arrived, everything else was accurate. "I warned him. If he let it go, things would have been easy. When the cat came, he saw me fighting with Fu Dre, and even witnessed Fu Dre trying to kill Gray while he was unconscious. If he didn't arrive on time, Gray might have died from the attack. He told Fu Dre that Gray would have his revenge. Looks like he's here because of that. Now, he has added Nathan to that list as well." Alec shook his head as he told Eva about what happened the last time he saw Gray and Void. "Do you think he'll not kill them?" Eva asked, worried about the safety of her friends. She didn't support them trying to kill Gray while he was down, but she still didn't want Gray to kill them. "From his past actions, I doubt that. If they survive, then they should count themselves lucky," Alec replied casually. The issue had nothing to do with him. He didn't have a good relationship with Nathan and Fu Dre to begin with, so even if Gray killed both of them, he didn't find anything wrong with it. They were the ones who wanted to kill him. He's only giving them a taste of their own medicine. Eva gazed at the ground, gripping the side of her shirt while biting her bottom lip. Alec didn't stay there for long and left soon after. There was nothing left for him there. He was glad he managed to succeed in rescuing these people, thanks to Gray. Gray appeared outside Kang's city. This time, he had a different color. Looking around, he saw countless people rushing out of the city. "I don't think they're still inside. Unfortunately, we don't know which direction they faced when leaving." Gray transmitted his voice to Void. Void and the space elementalist among the triplet were presently out, searching for Nathan and Fu Dre. They had searched the area within a kilometer of the city, but they hadn't seen any signs of Nathan or Fu Dre. Naturally, they would be in disguise since they wouldn't want to be captured by these infuriated experts. This would make searching for them even more difficult. "Why don't we go back to the girl? Nathan will search for a way to locate her," Void suggested. Gray thought about it and felt it was the best choice, but he decided to leave the space elementalist out in case there were any traces of Nathan around. He went back with Void, hiding in the void. Eva was still in the same location in the forest, seemingly waiting for someone. Of all the people captured, only 2 more people were still there with her. And they didn't stay long as well. They left after almost 1 hour. After almost 3 hours, Nathan and Fu Dre arrived. When Eva saw them, still alive and well, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Looks like he didn't find them," she thought internally. "Where's Gray?" Nathan asked when he arrived. "He left, searching for you too," Eva replied. "Us, why?" Fu Dre asked. "Revenge, obviously," Nathan answered. "What does he take us for? Does he think he can beat us, together?" Fu Dre snorted coldly. "You saw his fight with those old guys. Do you think we can defeat him?" Nathan asked. He had already fought with Gray before, and he lost woefully. Even though he was confident in his abilities, he knew for a fact that he was no match for Gray. Even though it was evident that Gray uses some sort of special technique that boosts his strength to the peak of the Sage Plane, he still didn't dare to undermine Gray's talent. Fu Dre wanted to reply, but he paused and thought about Gray's battle before his expression turned dark. He already knew the answer. They couldn't fight against 2 such experts, even if they used a special technique to increase their strengths. Of course they didn't have one that was as absurd as Gray's technique, so they couldn't even get to the peak of the sage plane despite not being far from it. They were still speaking when Gray stepped out of the void. They didn't notice his presence for a few seconds. Eva was the first to see him and she froze in fear. What are you doing here?" she stammered. "Don't get involved in this," Gray said gently. Nathan and Fu Dre turned to look at Gray, their expression sour. They couldn't believe a single individual would actually put pressure on them. One that was even below them in terms of cultivation stage. If not for Gray's secret technique, they wouldn't need to fear him, and he wouldn't have the courage to act as he does. "Gray, you're all healed up," Nathan said with a friendly smile. "Yeah, thanks to you, I guess," Gray replied with a smile. Fu Dre snorted. He wasn't like Nathan. "Why are you here?" "I came for you in particular, Nathan. I'll give you a chance. Cripple yourself and I'll let you live. You can even do it in a way that you can start cultivating again from scratch," Gray said casually. Nathan and Fu Dre flew into rage when they heard Gray's words. His words clearly showed that he held both individuals in contempt. He simply didn't think much of them. Chapter 892. "Who do you think you are?" Nathan asked, trying to contain his anger. He was visibly shaking from Gray's words. "I'm Gray, and presently, your fate lies in my hands. I'm killing him. There's no way he's surviving. Normally, I'd kill you as well, but on account of my relationship with Eva, although we're not close, I'll give you a chance," Gray said with a calm expression. He didn't wear his smile and his expression was once again bland. Fu Dre was the one who exploded in anger when he saw Gray pointing at him and declaring his fate like some god. "Come at me if you dare." He motioned at Gray, trying to get him to fight him. "Do you really want that?" Gray tilted his head to the side and looked at Fu Dre in disdain. He didn't even hide the fact that he was looking down at him. Fu Dre almost went mad when he saw Gray looking at him in this manner. He was about to charge out when Nathan grabbed his hand. "Gray, I agree that what we did was wrong, but aren't you being a little too excessive?" Nathan tried to resolve the matter calmly. "Excessive? I'm amazed such words can come out of your mouth. If I were dead, would you say that I am being excessive?" Gray scoffed at the hypocritical nature of Nathan. He was already used to this, so he wasn't surprised. "I already apologized for it," Nathan said. "Sorry, I don't do well with accepting apologies. Anyone who wants me dead will die," Gray said with an intimidating aura. He took a step forward and exploded out with a powerful aura. He was done talking. Since Nathan refused to cripple himself, then he would kill him as well. He only wanted to leave him alive because of Eva, but there was no need. Nathan and Fu Dre prepared to attack while Eva stood between Gray and the duo. Her intentions were clear. She wanted to protect them. Gray paused when he saw her standing in front of him. "Move. Please, don't do this," Eva begged, tears already in her eyes. Boom! A powerful fire attack exploded out from Gray and it sent Eva flying. Nathan and Fu Dre didn't expect Gray would attack her, so they were unable to react quickly. Even Eva didn't think Gray would attack her, so she wasn't able to put up a defense and was hit by the full force of the attack. After sending Eva flying, Gray rushed at the duo. Nathan and Fu Dre stood beside each other and attacked simultaneously. Gray didn't even feel bothered by their attacks. With a wave, a brownish screen appeared in front of him. It was just like a wind or fire screen, but this one was made from the earth element. The screen was hit by the two attacks and it shook. However, it didn't have any signs of cracks. A fireball appeared above Nathan and Fu Dre and came crashing down. The duo blocked the attack. While blocking the attack, earth spikes sprouted out of the ground, sending the duo into the air. They quickly balanced themselves, but they were met with Gray, who appeared within a few meters of them. Gray released his gravitational force field that sent the duo down. Just like most of Gray's victims, they weren't prepared for the sudden change and fell to the ground. Gray used his lightning domain next, sending streaks of lightning to attack the duo. They were zapped by the lightning at first, but they quickly created a fire dome to protect themselves from the lightning before sending out fire spears in Gray's direction. Gray was still mid-air, moving from one side to another. He dodged and blocked the spears. Nathan and Fu Dre jumped out from the range of the lightning domain and attacked Gray from two different angles. Gray spread out his hands and he was covered by a sea of flames. The attacks of both Nathan and Fu Dre entered the sea of flames and vanished, becoming part of it. This was an ability of Gray's fire domain. With it, he could swallow up any fire elemental attack sent at him, well, within his strength level that is, and add it to the power of the fire domain. Fighting against two fire elementalists, he had the absolute advantage, especially now that he had the higher cultivation stage. Nathan and Fu Dre exchanged glances when they saw this. They didn't stop after the first try, and with a flash, they unleashed one of their strongest attacks. Fu Dre sent out a stream of fire which seemed to have special flames mixed with it. There were some places that had different colors in the stream of fire. Nathan on the other hand used something that amazed Gray, a fire domain. The fire domain covered a large area and Fu Dre's attack power was increased with the help of Nathan's domain. The strength of this attack was presently at the peak of the Sage Plane. Finally, I thought they would bore me all through. Gray smiled internally and increased the intensity of his domain. He turned it to his icy flame domain, trying to freeze the attack that was coming his way. His domain and Nathan's domain clashed before the stream of fire entered his domain. Like receiving a double attack, his domain wavered, and the impact forced him back some meters. Nathan and Fu Dre continued their attack, not holding back. Eva opened her eyes at this moment. When she saw the duo forcing Gray back, she tried to stand up and stop them from fighting, but she noticed that she was drained. It would take a few minutes before she would be able to recover. This was thanks to Void using the darkness element to corrode her elemental essence. She was almost the same as a regular human at the moment, only far stronger. Boom! Bang! Bam! The fight started to intensify. Gray was using the lightning and fire element as his main attack options, while using the space and earth elements to dodge and block most of the attacks. The duo were pure fire elementalists, so unlike Gray, they couldn't use other elements, but they were holding their own against Gray at the moment. Chapter 893. Boom! Nathan and Fu Dre were sent crashing to the ground, destroying a large boulder by the side. Gray appeared beside them and attacked once again. He struck Fu Dre with a light sword that sent him flying. Nathan was about to move, but his legs were sealed to the ground with the earth that came out of the ground. He destroyed it with fire but was sent flying after receiving a blow from Gray. Given the disparity in terms of physique, the punch was something that hurt him. Fu Dre rushed back into the scene but was met with Gray's attacks. He was holding off Gray when Nathan attacked with his domain once again. Gray had to use his inscriptions to fight against Fu Dre while he turned to Nathan. Fu Dre refused to give him the opportunity he wanted, quickly dealing with the inscriptions and rushing into the fray. Nathan, with the help of his domain, had managed to block two lightning attacks, but he was hit by a large earth pillar that smacked him into the ground. Fu Dre saw two large palms made from earth attempting to clap, with him in the middle. He exploded out with a powerful sea of flames that stopped the hands, only for a few seconds, giving him the opportunity he needed to escape from the attack range. Unfortunately for him, after dodging that, Gray welcomed him with a large lightning hand that smacked him to the ground. He landed close to Nathan. Gray, currently covered in lightning, fell to the ground with full force. When he landed on the ground, the entire area was covered with lightning and both Nathan and Fu Dre were thrown up by the lightning that zapped them from the ground. Gray's figure blurred and he moved once again. Nathan hurriedly used his domain while Fu Dre brought out a talisman, placing it on his body. He felt lighter and moved with incredible speed. It was a peak Sage Plane Light Elementalist talisman that boosted the speed of its user. Gray didn't want to let any of them escape, so he chased after Fu Dre who was fleeing. Nathan tried to use the opportunity to attack Gray from behind, only to realize Gray saw through their plans when Gray turned to look at him with his current pale blue eyes. Nathan froze, and ice started to surface on his body. He was freezing. Gray's mental attack has the ability to freeze his victims thanks to the superior ability of the pale blue flame. Of course, there are ice users that had a better freezing ability, but Gray's ability with the pale blue freezing flame was among the top-notch ice users, and he wasn't even using ice. Nathan's eyes glowed red and the ice surrounding him started to melt off. Gray continued chasing after Fu Dre. He knew this attack was not going to stop Nathan, and he didn't do it to stop him, he only needed to make sure his surprise attack didn't work. Fu Dre took a sharp turn and attacked Gray. Gray was already expecting something like this, his body was covered with earth armor. When Fu Dre's attack struck him, it forced him back, and he swayed in the air. Nathan had broken free at this time, so he joined in on the attack as well. When their attacks were about to reach Gray, they seemingly vanished into thin air. Gray smirked and moved forward. Nathan and Fu Dre know better than to let him near them after experiencing his gravitational force field for the first time. They didn't dare to let him get close to them nor within 100 meters from them. They didn't know the limitations of the gravitational force field, so they had to be extra cautious. Eva watched the battle from the side, hoping to recover quickly so she could stop them. Just when she was about to recover, she noticed all her elemental essence vanished once again. She looked around only to see Void waving at her. "Stay put. If you move, I'll kill you," Void said. His small stature and voice were a complete contrast to what just came out of his mouth. He was threatening Eva, and from the terrifying killing intent he was releasing, she knew he wasn't bluffing. Void knew Gray wouldn't kill Eva, but he didn't mind. Unlike Gray, he didn't have any pity for her. "You're the one doing this to me?" Eva asked. Void didn't bother to reply, but his stance was clear, he would not allow anyone else to interfere in the battle. He raised a brow to look in the direction of Kang's city. Some powerful auras were rushing over from that direction. Gray already sensed them. "I'm taking the fight elsewhere, take the girl somewhere else." Void nodded and jumped on Eva's shoulder. Before she could say anything, they vanished. Nathan and Fu Dre were on the attack. Gray decided to use this to his advantage and rushed in another direction. However, the duo refused to follow him. He came back and realized the duo were trying to stall him so that the experts from Kang's city could arrive. He smiled and with a blink, he exchanged positions with Nathan, placing his hands on the shoulder of Fu Dre, who didn't expect him to appear beside him. They vanished. However, before leaving, he tagged Nathan. "I'll deal with this one first." Nathan was stunned when he saw this. He suddenly recalled Gray used this ability when fighting with the experts from Kang's city. Before he could react, Gray and Fu Dre were gone. His greatest fear was coming to pass. As long as they were not together, then Gray would be able to easily kill them off. It's better he picked him, he's in for some surprises. "I should leave, Fu Dre should be able to keep him busy," Nathan muttered before rushing off. Fu Dre had some powerful figures in the faction, so he had multiple top-tier talismans and techniques to use whenever he was in danger. Nathan's plan right now was to leave the Lutra realm and hide in the faction. No matter how talented Gray was, there was no way he would be able to kill him in the faction. Chapter 894. Gray and Fu Dre appeared close to the sea where Gray fought against the man. Looking at the place now, he couldn't be this was where he almost died. Fu Dre looked around, not seeing Nathan. He knew Gray had separated them. When they were together, they could barely keep up with Gray. Now that he was alone, he knew for sure that he was no match for Gray. Without wasting time, he brought out multiple talismans and placed them on his body, increasing his defense, attack, and speed. His current power wasn't far off from those at the very peak of the Sage Plane. Gray didn't rush him, letting him do what he wanted. "Are you done?" he asked calmly. Fu Dre didn't respond as he snorted coldly. Gray's words were like a mockery to him. The fact that Gray even let him complete his action showed how little Gray thought of him, which he found to be infuriating. With a yell, he charged at Gray. Gray prepared for an attack. As Fu Dre got close, he sent out a powerful lightning orb in his direction. Fu Dre used the fire element to block the attack, countering with a fire rain. Gray covered himself with an earth dome, protecting himself from the fire rain. A lightning bolt struck from the sky, hitting Fu Dre. Fu Dre tried dodging the attack, but the attack was too fast. Even with his increased speed, he was no match for Gray's attack speed. He fell from the sky into the water. Gray waited for him, but he didn't see any signs of him coming out. Looking to his left, he saw Fu Dre's figure darting through the water, trying to escape. Smart, he sneered before disappearing. Boom! The water exploded after Gray struck it, and Fu Dre was forced out by his attack. You can't escape your fate. This time next year will be your anniversary, well, death anniversary. Gray chuckled and attacked. Fu Dre was more infuriated with Gray's overconfidence than the fact that he wanted to kill him. Gray was almost certain he would kill him. Fu Dre didn't believe this. With all the talismans I have, he can't kill me. He calmed his head and started to take rational actions. From his current perspective, he knew falling for Gray's trick would mean the end of him. Once he lets his emotions get the better of him, then Gray would capitalize on that and kill him. Fu Dre settling his emotions didn't escape Gray's eyes, but he wasn't worried. He would still kill him, even if he broke through. Since we're alone, there's no use in hiding my other elements, he thought. But after a while, he decided to use only the wind element. The darkness element will be used discreetly. He stretched out his right hand, and a powerful suction force dragged Fu Dre towards him. Fu Dre didn't expect this and was taken by surprise. Just as he was about to get close to Gray, he attacked. Gray unleashed his gravitational force field after dragging Fu Dre close to him. The force field pushed Fu Dre down, making him miss his target. Gray continued his attack with the wind element, trapping Fu Dre in a twister. He fueled it with the fire element while sending earth shards into it as well. Fu Dre destroyed one of the talismans with him, and an earth armor appeared on his body, blocking most of the attacks. Another talisman was used, but this one was an attack talisman, forcefully breaking the twister. Gray unleashed his inscriptions while using his space element to the fullest. He went on a full assault. Fu Dre had enough talisman to fight for a long time, but since they weren't part of his personal strength, there was no way he could utilize them well. Gray, on the other hand, was using all his elements, and with the help of his domains and inscriptions, Fu Dre found it difficult to defend himself even with so many talismans. Boom! His figure was sent flying, crashing into the water. When he landed on the water, his figure was shrouded by a spatial force and he vanished. Gray noticed the space element and knew Fu Dre had used a spatial talisman to teleport from there. He had marked him, so when this happened, he vanished immediately as well. Over 80 kilometers away, Fu Dre appeared, breathing heavily. Blood was on the side of his mouth, and his hair was disarranged. He was still catching his breath when Gray grabbed him by the neck, lifting him up. I told you, I'll kill you. Gray tightened his grip, but Fu Dre used another talisman, an attack talisman that sent Gray flying. Gray's figure crashed into a mountain by the side, causing a deep crater in the mountain. Gray crawled out of the crater, but Fu Dre was already nowhere to be seen. He knew he had used another teleportation talisman, and with a blink, he followed right after. Fu Dre appeared in a bustling city filled with people from the Lutra race. Gray appeared close to him. Unfortunately, there was a peak sage plane expert. Seeing Gray and Fu Dre appear simultaneously, he attacked instantly. Gray blocked the attack while Fu Dre used another talisman to escape from the scene. The Lutra race expert wanted to keep Gray from leaving, but it was impossible. Gray used his lightning domain to keep the expert from moving before leaving. He used his gravitational force field as well as a twister fueled with lightning and fire to attack the expert. He didn't know the end result of the attack, but he knew it would most definitely cause him some harm. Fu Dre appeared outside the city, but Gray followed right after, attacking the moment he saw him. Bang! Bam! Fu Dre's figure crashed into the ground, breaking the trees on his path. I told you, you cannot escape. Gray walked over to Fu Dre. Fu Dre stood up, looking at Gray with hateful eyes. Why are you so persistent? He asked angrily. I told you, anyone who wants me dead will die. There are no exceptions. Gray replied casually. Fu Dre gritted his teeth angrily. He couldn't accept his current predicament. Chapter 895. Boom! Fu Dre's figure slammed into the rocks by the side of a mountain range. He had lost count of how many times Gray had slammed him into the ground. After repeated attempts to escape with a teleportation talisman, he had almost given up entirely. No matter where he vanishes to, Gray always appears right next to him. It was as if they were teleporting simultaneously on the same spatial tunnel. He had tried going to different places, but Gray always finds him. There was a time he used the teleportation talisman twice, disappearing the moment he appeared in a particular spot, but Gray still found him in less than a few seconds. Gray was like a really bad headache that just wouldn't go away. The only difference is that he was here to kill him. There wasn't any shred of pity whenever Gray attacked, and he seems to want to make sure he kills him quickly. Why don't you go after Nathan? He was the one who sent me to kill you. Fu Dre tried to change Gray's mind. He won't escape, don't worry, you'll have so much time on the other side. Gray replied casually. Are you sure you want to do this? If I die, my uncles will kill you. Fu Dre tried to threaten Gray with his background. Even if your father is the faction leader, I'll still kill you. Gray's reply was resolute. Fu Dre tossed multiple attack talismans at Gray, but he dodged and attacked once again, sending Fu Dre flying. Fu Dre hit the ground, bouncing off it multiple times before finally coming to a stop. His body was a wreck, blood dripping from different parts of his body. Please, it doesn't have to be this way. We can work things out. Fu Dre finally resorted to begging. As time went on, he realized there was no escaping Gray. Even if he wanted to, Gray wouldn't allow him. His only choice was to beg. As I said, I don't do well with apologies. Besides, if you were stronger, or you knew I can't kill you, you wouldn't be begging me. Gray walked over, eyes blazing with killing intent. Fu Dre attacked, but it was useless. Gray easily blocked it, attacking Fu Dre. With a powerful kick, he sent Fu Dre flying into the air. He vanished, appearing in the sky. He kicked Fu Dre to the ground. Boom! Fu Dre's figure slammed into the ground, creating a crater while also creating a dust cloud. Gray appeared in front of the crater as Fu Dre tried to crawl out, hoping to escape. He froze both Fu Dre's arms and legs, making it impossible for him to move. Fu Dre was unable to move, defenseless in front of Gray. It was almost the same as Gray's condition at that time, the only difference was that he was conscious. Gray created a fusion orb, it was still his strongest attack. When the fusion orb came in contact with Fu Dre was unable to defend against it and it disintegrated him to nothingness. It was as if he was never there. Gray's facial expression was still the same, even though he just killed one of his companions from the faction. Next, Nathan. Gray's figure blurred and he vanished from his current location. Close to the portal that leads to the Aurora continent. Nathan was currently standing around 2 kilometers away from the portal. With his speed, he would get there in a few seconds. Gray should still be occupied with Fu Dre, I'll leave before he finishes him off. He knew Gray would defeat Fu Dre in the end, so he wanted to leave as soon as possible. He increased his speed, and just when he could see the portal, his heart throbbed, and he started to get an uneasy feeling. His heart sank when he sensed an attack coming his way. He didn't need any words, he knew it was from Gray. How could he be so fast? It hasn't even been up to 30 minutes. He was left aghast. He blocked the attack, trying to move forward as well. Gray appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Did you think you can escape? He asked with an apathetic glance. You're making a mistake. Doing this will only make you hated in the faction. Nathan tried to reason with him. Don't worry, I'm cool with people hating me. But hating me because of you, I'm not so sure. You don't have the best reputation in the faction to start with. Gray answered. Nathan was a proud figure who looked down on multiple people, so it was normal that he had a fairly bad reputation in the faction. The only reason he was famous was that he was talented and came from a fairly powerful family. Nathan gulped down. At this point, he started to regret his decision of wanting revenge against Gray. From the start, he was the one who tried to attack Gray when Gray took the treasure. After being defeated, he didn't accept it and tried to fight again, but didn't get a chance. The matter had been troubling him for some time, so when he saw Gray in his unconscious state, he just wanted him dead. I should have killed him myself. He regretted holding back. Had he killed him then, he wouldn't have had to face a vengeful Gray. Gray looked at him coldly, and just as he prepared to attack, the young man who was standing guard at the portal walked over. The young man was at the peak of the Sage Plane. He couldn't guard the portal without sufficient strength, so even though he was a genius, he had to make sacrifices. Besides, this would give him the points he needed. He was around 26 years or so and was older than both Gray and Nathan. "What's going on?" he asked as he looked at both individuals. "Oh good, you're here. This psychopath is trying to kill me." Nathan pointed at Gray with a relieved look on his face. The appearance of this youth might just save his life. "Aren't you the guy who almost died?" The youth turned to Gray. Gray nodded, studying the youth. Chapter 896. Gray looked at the youth. He saw him when he was coming back, but he didn't really speak with him. "You want to kill him, correct?" the young man asked. Gray nodded, not hiding his intentions. "I only came for him." "If I may ask, why?" the young man asked. Gray told him what happened when he was unconscious, and also what led to Nathan having ill will towards him. "So, you're saying he wanted to kill you because you beat him up? So now you're here for revenge, right?" the young man asked. "Yes." Gray nodded gently. If the young man tried to stop him, he had already decided to fight against him as well. He didn't care who stepped forward, as long as it wasn't an elemental venerable. He wasn't afraid of anyone. "Why are you asking him so many questions?" "He wants to break the rule of the faction. And him saying I wanted to kill him was a lie. I never attempted to attack him while he was unconscious." Nathan tried to justify himself. The youth turned to look at Nathan, his expression blank. He turned around, and to the surprise of both Gray and Nathan, he walked back. "I was never here." His words stunned the duo. Nathan stood still. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. Gray, on the other hand, laughed out loudly. He couldn't hide the fact that he actually liked what the young man did. Most people would want to find a way to resolve the issue, but the young man knew what was best and left them alone. What was more amusing was him saying he was never there. "You bastard, you'll pay for this!" Nathan screamed. "How?" "You'll be dead soon." The young man's voice came from afar. With that, he left Nathan to his fate. He was certain Gray could defeat Nathan. To be honest, he wasn't very confident in being able to stop Gray, hence there was no need in making an enemy of the fastest rising genius in the faction. From the time the Elder gave the order for Gray to be found, it was evident to everyone that Gray was very important to the faction, and the faction leader would definitely protect him at all costs. Even if it meant weeding out a few bad eggs who were no doubt geniuses. Nathan stood opposite Gray, gritting his teeth with both hands clenched. "If you think you can kill me, you're deceiving yourself," he spat out coldly. "Don't fool yourself, you will definitely die," Gray said calmly. Nathan yelled and attacked with his domain. Gray also spread out his domain. "Void, seal the area." He had called Void over, leaving Eva alone. He wanted Void's help with sealing the area with his space domain. This will ensure that Nathan would be unable to escape, while he would also not have to worry about people intervening. The duo exploded out with powerful fire elemental attacks, both displaying techniques from the Permanent faction. Gray decided to take out his other elements as well, just like what he did with Fu Dre. The young man couldn't see the battle any longer after Void sealed the area, and he didn't attempt to try. Gray was free to use all his elements, without fear. A water cube appeared in the sky, along with 3 inscriptions. They all attacked Nathan simultaneously, not giving him any chance to counter. Gray drew closer to him and spreading out both of his hands, a powerful repulsion force sent Nathan flying. This was his wind element, while Nathan was mid-air, the cube and inscriptions continued attacking. The cube was made by his water element, while his inscriptions made use of the fire, lightning, and wind element. He released a small black orb into the air that broke apart, sending out small particles of darkness. It slowly started to corrode Nathan as the battle progressed. Nathan was getting desperate after being overwhelmed by Gray. He didn't even have the chance to use any of his powers. Just like their first encounter, Gray was dominating him. Boom! Bang! Bam! He had crashed into the ground countless times, causing multiple craters on the ground. Void was watching the battle from the side, with a satisfied smile. Nathan brought out a teleportation talisman and tried to escape with it. However, Void's space domain sealed the entire area, the space included. Using the space talisman had little to no effect. All it did was take him to the edge of the domain, but it was unable to take him out of the domain. Gray appeared beside him and attacked once again. Nathan fell to the ground once again, mouth bleeding, and a large injury on his back that was inflicted by a lightning attack. His eyes raged with madness, he could not accept his death without fighting back. He brought out a talisman that made Gray pause. It was an elemental venerable attack talisman. "Come closer if you dare!" Nathan roared. "Do you think I'm afraid of that?" Gray looked at him coldly. "Even if you might survive it, you'll be injured once again, on the brink of death." Nathan threatened. "I'm not afraid. I have experience with this." Gray didn't flinch in front of a possible deadly attack. He had done his calculations. Even though Nathan had an elemental venerable attack talisman, he couldn't use it like an elemental venerable attacking personally. From using the light elementalist elemental venerable talisman the last time, he already knew the time limit. All he had to do was react accordingly, and he would be uninjured. Of course, there were risks, but he was confident with his calculations. Nathan hadn't used this before here, so he wouldn't know how long it would take before the realm snuffs out the attack of anything above the sage plane. Gray approached Nathan with a look of disdain. Nathan felt like Gray was looking down on him for using a power that wasn't his, and it infuriated him. With a powerful roar, he unleashed the talisman's attack on Gray. Chapter 897. Boom! The attack talisman exploded, rocking the entire place. Void space domain shattered instantly, and he was also sent flying from the impact of the attack. Gray, on the other hand, was also sent flying, in the direction of the portal. The moment the attack was released, the realm reacted accordingly and quickly rushed to snuff it out. Nevertheless, the impact had been released and Gray and Void were nowhere close to Nathan any longer. Since he was the user, he wasn't affected by the attack. The young man who was standing guard by the portal looked in the direction when he heard the explosion. He sucked in a cold breath when he saw the reaction from the world. He knew one of the duo had used an attack exceeding the sage plane, and since Gray was the one with the advantage, Nathan was the only one who would resort to such methods. Disgraceful. He shook his head. He saw a figure shooting through the air at an unprecedented pace, banging into the ground. The figure slid on the ground before hitting a large rock and breaking through it. Only after hitting 2 trees did the figure stop. This figure was Gray. Void flew in another direction. Thinking of the fact that Nathan would most likely report him to the faction for leaving them alone, he wanted to involve himself, but he stopped. The outcome of the battle had nothing to do with him. If Nathan came and wanted to pass through the portal, he would let him pass. Nathan was standing in the same location, looking at the result of his attack. He couldn't say he wasn't impressed by it. "Ha ha, cocky fool. I want to see how you can survive that." Nathan laughed in exhilaration. He didn't even bother to leave the Lutra realm as he flew over to where Gray crashed. To him, even if Gray survived the attack, he would be brutally injured. There was no way he would be able to sustain his special technique. Once that happens, he would kill Gray with his hands. When he got to the place Gray crashed, he saw Gray's figure, motionless. Repeat your last words. Nathan mocked. Gray opened his eyes, blood dripping from the side of his mouth. He was still covered by the dust in the area, so he couldn't get a good view of Nathan, nor did Nathan have a good view of him. Nathan walked closer, and seeing Gray's condition, his pupils shrank. Impo. Boom. His figure was sent flying, even before he could finish his statement. While mid-air, he forcefully stabilized his body and shot straight for the portal. There was no time to think, he had to leave the Lutra realm immediately. Gray's figure appeared in front of the portal and he released his gravitational force field. Both his domains were utilized as well. He would not let Nathan leave this place. As long as Nathan left, the elder outside would save him. Gray didn't want that. Are you mad? Nathan screamed when he saw Gray blocking his path. This was unacceptable to him. Gray on the other hand smiled and shot at him. Before he could react, Gray was standing in front of him and he punched him to the ground. The power behind Gray's blows was far superior to Nathan's physique. He felt a few of his ribs break when the blow connected. His body bounced off the ground, and he was met with Gray's attack once again, sending him crashing in another direction. Void, are you all right? Gray asked telepathically after sending Nathan flying. I'm good. I retreated quickly, but was still impacted by the attack. Void replied. He added after some time, a meal will fix me. All right. Gray didn't argue with him. As long as he was fine, he could eat all he wanted. It wasn't like Gray gets tired of cooking. He still cooked frequently for his teacher. Void was elated when he heard this and felt it was worth it. Although he was hurting all over, he would be fine soon. His healing capabilities were in no way inferior to Gray's. When Gray arrived, Nathan was already on both feet, staring at Gray with hateful eyes. He spat out a mouthful of blood before yelling at the top of his lungs. His essence started to increase, and before long, his cultivation shot from the 8th stage of the Sage Plane to the peak of the Sage Plane. He was ready to risk it all. Using this technique would cause him harm, hence he had been refraining from using it, but now, he had no choice. Either he uses it, or he dies. All that mattered to him right now was surviving, nothing else. Getting serious? I thought you'd accept death easily. Gray raised a brow when he saw this, but he still didn't think too much of it. He would still overpower Nathan. As long as Nathan was not an elemental venerable, he would defeat him. I want you dead. Nathan replied with a low growl. Same here. Gray said and attacked. Nathan rushed at him as well. The duo exchanged multiple blows in a matter of seconds. The young man who was standing guard at the portal looked at them, stunned by their strength. Of course he was powerful in his own right, but these two were quite something, especially Gray. Against the current Nathan, he had confidence in coming out victorious, but against Gray, he wasn't so sure. What was more shocking about Gray was that he actually survived that attack. From the impact alone, the young man already knew he wouldn't be able to survive it, yet Gray not only survived, but he was still fighting with such intensity. He wasn't on anyone's side, whoever won had nothing to do with him. He sat down and decided to enjoy the battle. After all, it's not every day he got to witness a battle of such caliber, and from young geniuses like himself as well. Chapter 898. Boom! Bang! The fight continued with greater intensity. Nathan was putting up a great fight against Gray. Even Gray was a little taken aback that he could fight this much, given his somewhat cowardly nature. Void was by the side, watching with the young man. They even occasionally spoke about the fight. Gray was fighting with 5 elements, 6 if his darkness element was added, but only he and Void knew of its involvement, so Nathan felt he was using 5. I thought he had only 4, how can he have 4? It's unheard of. Nathan was freaking out. Gray's abilities were getting more ahead of his comprehension. If things continued like this, he was sure to lose. What was worse was that he couldn't keep this technique forever. The moment he exited it, he would enter a weakened state. At that time, even someone who just broke through to the sage plane could kill him, much less a freak like Gray. His death was almost certain, hence he tried to escape multiple times. Gray, however, always finds a way to stop him from leaving, blocking his path of escape. The portal was becoming less and less a good option since Gray placed himself between him and the portal. If he wanted to get there, he had to get through Gray, something that was impossible for him. Thinking up to this point, he quickly changed his mind. Since he couldn't get to the portal, he would head into the Lutra realm. Maybe he could find a means of escaping there. As long as he survived, he didn't care what he did. Also, if other members of their faction came up, then he had some hope of getting them to threaten Gray. All they needed to do was to tell him they would report him to the faction, which should stop Gray from killing. Gray, on the other hand, had no idea what was going through Nathan's head. He continued his attack, while stopping him from getting to the portal. Nathan suddenly made a quick turn and bolted into the Lutra realm, to Gray's surprise. Eh? Gray was a little confused when he saw this. His initial thought was that Nathan was trying to draw him forward and then try to get to the portal. Only after he didn't see any signs of Nathan turning around did he realize what was happening. Nathan had given up on the portal and decided to seek refuge in the Lutra realm. Gray gave chase and Void had to leave the young man by the portal alone. The young man almost wanted to follow them as well since he was being entertained by the battle, but he couldn't leave this place, so he had to stay, unfortunately. Gray was faster than Nathan, so he quickly caught up with him and they continued fighting. However, Nathan found an opportunity to run once again. He started using peak sage plane-like talismans to increase his speed, taking it above his present level. Against any other peak sage plane elementalist, he would escape without any problems. Since Gray was hell-bent on killing him, his fate was sealed. His speed exceeded that of Gray by some margin, but that was all he needed to escape from him. Gray didn't feel bothered by this. With a blink, he appeared in the location Nathan was. It didn't take long before Nathan realized something was wrong. He couldn't get away from Gray, no matter how fast he was. He even used a teleportation talisman as well, but it was useless. Gray still found him, to his dismay. This was something he never thought would be possible. "Give up, you can't escape," Gray said, like the Death Reaper he currently is. F. "What are you?" Nathan asked with a horrified look. "Death's shadow," Gray replied sincerely. Nathan didn't even doubt it at this moment. To him, Gray was death itself, not even its shadow. "You're a maniac," he complained before using another teleportation talisman. He couldn't resign to his fate. "No matter how much you run, I will find you." Gray's voice echoed in Nathan's ear when he appeared in another location. Looking behind him, he saw Gray staring at him with an apathetic look. Gray's eyes glowed pale blue and Nathan froze for a quarter of a second. This short time was more than enough for Gray. He shortened the gap between them and punched him in the chest. His blow exploded with a fiery blue flame that spread out an icy wind with it. Nathan slowly started to freeze from the cold. Using his fire element, he dealt with the ice and tried to run away, but Gray stopped him. The blow he received at point-blank range had caused him severe internal injuries, and his present actions were a bit clouded. Even though his vision was blurry at the moment, he still attempted to run. "You can't run away, not from my hands," Gray said casually as he smacked Nathan out of a spatial tunnel. With him having the power to stop him from escaping into the spatial tunnel created by those talismans, Nathan's hope of escaping was as good as gone. Nathan breathed heavily, presently on his knees in a condition he never thought he would be in. "Please, all this can be resolved," he begged. After realizing there was no hope of escaping, he tried to beg. "It can't." Gray's reply was cold. "All right, how about I cripple myself? You offered to let me go if I crippled myself." "I want to," Nathan begged. That will be unfair to your friend. Besides, I already promised him that I'll send you over. Gray said with a playful smile. We're not friends, I can assure you that, we were only using each other. Now that he's dead, no one is as glad as I am. Please, let me go, I won't even resist you crippling me yourself. Nathan begged with tears already in his eyes. Gray looked at the pitiful Nathan, a shame a genius is reduced to such a level. How dare I call myself in the presence of a true genius? Chapter 899. Gray continued staring down at Nathan and shook his head. People will always resort to anything when faced with death. He knew from the start that Nathan was not someone who had resolve. As long as things weren't going his way, he would change. From being a respectful genius, he tried to stop people from helping Gray because he was beaten up. Now that he knew there was no way for him to win the fight, instead of going down with his honor, he wanted to cripple himself to ensure he didn't die. Gray was the one who gave him this choice from the start, but since he refused then, it was already over. There was no way he was going to give him the chance again. When he thought about it sincerely, he realized he made a mistake. As long as he wanted to kill Fu Dre, then he had to kill Nathan since he was the one who sent Fu Dre after him. It was like wanting to kill an assassin, but forgiving the person who sent the assassin to kill you. Nathan continued pleading. He was currently on his knees, grabbing onto Gray's legs. When he saw that Gray looked distracted, he released an attack. However, he noticed Gray's figure didn't move. I already know your type, and will naturally make moves to stop things of this sort. You cannot defeat me. Gray's cold voice entered his ear. Gray used the darkness element to eat off all the attacks. He had also been pumping the darkness element into his body. This was the reason his attack power dwindled exponentially, unknown to him, hence it became very easy for Gray to block the attack. Nathan fell to the ground in despair. He was desperate, and he wanted to live. I can't accept this, he muttered repeatedly. Gray bent down to his level. You don't have to. Nathan's eyes glowed with madness and he grabbed onto Gray. Since you want me dead, I'll take you with me, he roared. Before Gray could push him off, he exploded with terrifying power. Gray didn't think Nathan would actually destroy his core in hopes of taking Gray down with him. Given the short distance, Gray felt the full force of the attack. He was sent flying, crashing through an entire mountain that was almost a kilometer wide. Nathan was dead, but Gray's condition wasn't good. He was injured in different places, and a large hole was in his stomach. Damn it, I'm injured again, he complained. This injury was not on the same level as the previous one, but it was serious. He brought out the best healing tonic he had with him and gulped it down. The light element residuals in his body from the healing session he had from his last injury also went to work as well. He used his own light element to try to heal the injury. The bleeding soon stopped, and he started to recover, slowly, but he was recovering. Void appeared beside him with a smile. That doesn't look good. I know, Gray said, still lying in the rubble. He vanished to the cave where Keith and the snake stayed, entering the water there. It took some time, but the hole in his stomach started to cover. After almost 3 days, he managed to step out of the cave. His previous clothes were a mess, so he changed his clothes. That moron killed himself just to take me down with him. Gray shook his head as they headed back to the portal. There was nothing left for him to do in the Lutra realm. He had exerted revenge on the people who wanted him dead, and Clouse' call for help had been over a month. He hadn't even been able to speak with him since he had been unconscious. While he was healing up, he didn't try to communicate with them since he wanted to focus on his health. He soon appeared close to the portal. To his surprise, he saw a familiar figure there, Eva. You're here. He looked at her. Where's he? Eva asked. Dead, Gray replied. There was no use hiding it. He already told Eva of his plans of killing them from the start, so even if he lied, she would find out sooner or later when the duo doesn't return from the Lutra realm. Eva bit her bottom lips. Why did you have to? Gray looked at her for some time, but he didn't answer her question. he didn't have to explain his actions. She knew Nathan wanted to kill him, and for him, that was enough for her to come up with a reason why he killed them. Gray turned to the young man guarding the portal, and after nodding, he left without saying a word. Eva turned to the young man. "You let him kill him?" "I didn't see anything," the young man replied. Eva wanted to continue speaking, but the young man continued his words. "You saw him just arriving. He was never here. Other than seeing him enter and leave the realm, I don't know him," he added. Eva nodded and left the portal. Gray was standing with the elder outside the portal when Eva arrived. She went straight to the elder. Gray looked at her, not even bothering to stop her from speaking. When the elder heard of what Gray did, he turned to Gray, who still had the same nonchalant expression. He knew a thing or two about what happened in the Lutra, especially the part where Gray was almost killed by Fu Dre, but he didn't really know much about Nathan being involved. "Gray, is what she said true?" He turned to Gray. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Gray nodded to the elder's question, before turning his attention to Eva, who kept out the part where Nathan stopped her from helping him. The elder turned to look at Eva and saw her disgruntled expression. He inquired about what Gray was talking about, and she told him everything, including how Nathan stopped her from helping Gray. Chapter 900. The elder turned to look at Gray, a little tired from the issue. He didn't know what to do, since all Gray did was take revenge against people who wanted to kill him. However, it was against the faction's rules for one member to kill another. In a way, he couldn't say he felt any pity for Nathan and Fu Dre after Gray killed them, but with the background of Fu Dre, things would be a little difficult for them to push it aside. Nathan's background was slightly negligible, but Fu Dre had uncles who were part of the higher-ups in the faction. "You'll return back to the faction leader will deal with this issue." The elder was glad he wasn't the faction leader. With a simple wave of his hand, he transferred the matter to the faction leader. He didn't need to worry or even think about how it would be resolved. He took Gray and Eva back to the faction leader, who was alone. After telling him everything he heard, he left them alone since he still had to guard the portal. The faction leader saw the facial expression of the elder and knew he wanted to leave the place as soon as possible. He couldn't help but shake his head. Being the faction leader was a huge responsibility, since he had to take care of multiple issues. He looked at Eva and Gray. "You'll not speak of this to anyone else, I'll settle it." The duo nodded, and with a wave, Eva was sent to the faction, leaving only Gray. "You could have reported them to the faction. It would have been easier to deal with them that way." The faction leader looked at Gray with a somewhat dejected look. "No, since I wasn't dead, at most the faction would expel them. I've read the rule books, it'll favor them." Gray told the faction leader his reason for dealing with the matter on his own. Fu Dre's background is a little complicated. His family members will not let this matter slide. Of course, that's if they hear about it. The faction leader caressed his temples. Gray could already guess what he wanted to do from his words. The faction leader planned to keep it from the other elders. Now Gray understood why the faction leader warned them not to speak of it to anyone else. "Thank you." Gray bowed. He knew this wasn't easy for the faction leader, since he had to face the repercussions if word of what Gray did came out. But given the chance, he would take the same step. "You can leave. Please, try to stay out of trouble." The faction leader felt a headache. He knew the members of Fu Dre's family already knew of his death, likewise that of Nathan's. They would try to seek out why they died, and news of what happened would eventually come out. "I'll protect him, no matter what," he concluded internally. There was no way he was going to allow anything to happen to Gray. To him, not just him, but most of the elders, Gray was their future. They couldn't afford to lose him. Keeping him in the faction would keep him safe, but it would also bar his growth, so they had to take the difficult choice of letting him explore the world. Permanent faction. Gray appeared in his house. It was the same way he left it. Looking around, he brought out his communication device. It was time to answer his friends. When he sent his spiritual consciousness inside, his head was flooded with messages and he almost had a headache. What's happening with Clouse? He couldn't help but wonder. He sent a message to Clouse and had almost an instant reply. Classic Clouse. "Where the hell have you been?" Clouse's voice echoed in Gray's head. Gray chuckled awkwardly but told him of his trip to the Lutra realm and how he almost died. "It's nice that you're all right." Clouse heaved a sigh of relief. While the duo were still speaking, Alice and Reynolds joined in on the conversation thanks to Clouse notifying them of Gray's presence. After apologizing to the group and promising to cook them a good meal when they next meet, he asked Clouse what he needed help with. According to Clouse, there was this girl he met when he went out for a trip. They became friends after some time and he started to like her. After confessing his love, he found out the feeling was mutual. A few months later, he found out the girl's family wanted to marry her off to another family in hopes of creating ties. The girl refused since she didn't like the guy they wanted to marry her off to, but her parents didn't listen to her. Clouse charged over when he heard this, but he was unable to convince them not to marry her off to another family. After all, he wasn't from a powerful family. Other than being a genius who managed to join the Moonlight faction despite only accepting girls, there was nothing else in his resume. He tried to get the guy who wanted to marry her into giving up, but the guy told him to stop the marriage if he dared. And he planned to do just that, with Gray's help, of course. "So what's the plan?" Gray asked. "I'll get him to compete with me in front of everyone present. If I win, I get to marry her," Clouse replied. With such a large crowd, the young man would not want to refuse since it would affect the reputation of his family. "You'll need some protection from your faction. This will definitely make the guy's family hate you," Gray said. "I already spoke with an elder. She agreed to follow me there. She wouldn't appear unless necessary," Clouse replied. "All right, I'll make a stop at your place before leaving." "When's the marriage?" Gray agreed to go with him. "In 2 days," Clouse replied with a burst of sheepish laughter. Gray almost facepalmed. "What would you have done if I didn't respond?" "I'd still go," Clouse replied with determination. Chapter 901. Gray left the faction immediately after they finished speaking. Since it was in 2 days, and Clouse was in another region, he had to head over to assist him. His plan of visiting Kyle had been placed on hold and he would only meet him when he was done with Clouse' issue. If things go well, Clouse would get a new enemy who would want to kill him, but he will be able to keep the girl he likes. Actually, thinking about Clouse' playboy nature, Gray had to ask him multiple times if he were serious. It would be embarrassing if after doing all this, Clouse and the girl end up separating after some months. Clouse reassured him that this was the one. He couldn't say no to his friend's plea for help, but he warned him on behalf of the girl, if he breaks up with her, he would beat the crap out of him, and he meant every word. Clouse told him he didn't have any plans of leaving her, and of course, he wouldn't get married now as well. There were still things he had to do, but he liked the girl, and since she also didn't want to get married to the young man, and liked him as well, he didn't mind breaking up the supposed marriage. "I hope I don't regret this." These were Gray's final words before leaving the faction. Gray used up tons of essence stones since he was in a hurry, and after almost 2 days of continuous teleportation, he got to where Clouse told him they would meet. Arriving early, he decided to do a background check on the young lady Clouse was in love with, and also the family of the young man. With the reputation of the two families, it didn't take long for him to hear a thing or two about them. The name of the young lady was Jahan. She's the last daughter of the Braun family head, one of the most reputable families in this city. The young man she was getting married off to was called Gregory, and he was 26 with 2 wives. He was in the Sage Plane and wasn't a part of any faction. His family wasn't a top-tier family, but it was above the Braun family. He developed an interest in Jahan after seeing her some years back, and now that she was around 19 years old, he wanted to marry her. When the Braun family heard of his interest, although they didn't like his conduct, it was still a good idea to them since it would help their family grow further. A connection with the Robertson family would be beneficial to both families. With each other's help, they could grow further. The story of Jahan circulated as well, but it wasn't really dominant. People didn't even take it seriously. Later that night, Clouse contacted him, telling him of his arrival. Gray left the tavern he was staying at and went over to meet up with Clouse and the elder from the Moonlight faction. "Why didn't you ask the others to come as well?" Gray asked when the duo met. The elder who came with him was one of the few elders who went to the competition. Seeing Gray, she couldn't help but take a deep glance at him. She was stunned when she sensed his cultivation stage. The third stage of the sage plane already? He's even faster than him. Her eyes darted to look at Clouse, who was in the second stage of the sage plane. One thing worth mentioning was that at the time Gray competed against the Syphilis faction, Clouse broke through to the sage plane sometime after that. Gray was still at the peak of the Overlord plane when Clouse broke through to the sage plane, but now, Gray was in the third stage while Clouse was in the second. She already thought Clouse's growth was unprecedented. Looking at Gray, she didn't know what to say. Gray was simply flying, and to think it was harder to advance every plane, these guys were making it look like child's play. Gray bowed to her as a sign of respect and she nodded. "I must say, I'm pretty impressed you managed to get an elder to follow you over such a matter." Gray was impressed by Clouse's ability to convince an elder to come with him. "You have no idea what I'll have to face after this." Clouse gave a wry laugh. Gray could see a bit of pain in his eyes. It was as if he would suffer for this. "That's your problem." "What now?" Gray didn't bother to ask. Knowing Clouse, he didn't want to ask any further since Clouse might trick him. The elder watched the two youngsters talk before leaving them alone. She had a few friends around, so she decided to entertain herself there. She'll keep an eye on them just to ensure they were safe. Gray was someone she wouldn't want anything to happen to. Even if he wasn't part of her faction, she wouldn't want anything to happen to him. Clouse's adventures were fun to listen to, as always. Gray was still in awe of Clouse's luck. He tends to find the best things without even trying. Take for instance, during one of his travels, he saw a rare plant that could make a healing tonic, one of the best healing tonics in the world. How did he find it? He went to take a leak. This was one of the most absurd stories Gray had heard. It was almost unbelievable. A rare plant that always grows in the most dangerous places and takes multiple rare circumstances, yet Clouse found it because he went to take a leak. "Are you even human?" Gray couldn't help but ask. "You really shouldn't be the one to say that." Clouse laughed as they went into a tavern for some drinks. Time went by and before the duo knew it, it was already daybreak. "Let's go break up a marriage," Clouse said as the sun rose. Chapter 902. Gray looked at Clouse's smiling face. He couldn't help but chuckle. Void had an exhilarated expression. It was evident that he was excited about the upcoming trouble they were about to cause. Disrupting a marriage is seen as a sign of disrespect and trouble-seeking by most people. Gregory's family members will definitely see it this way. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Gray asked once again. "Having second thoughts?" Clouse asked. He had never known Gray to be someone afraid of people. Gray shook his head. "I just want to ensure you are aware doing this will put you on the bad side of the Robertson family. I have too many enemies, adding one more isn't much of an issue." Clouse shrugged, not bothered by the prospect of having new enemies. Gray didn't try to stop him. Since Clouse had the thought of doing this from the start, he knew he couldn't stop him. And given Clouse's personality, he was bound to make thousands of enemies as he grows. Even if he tried not to, his mouth will most likely give him away. The duo had to wait a little longer, to ensure they weren't the first to show up there. Clouse wanted them to enter the ceremony in a grand style. Gray didn't have any preferences, so he went with Clouse's idea. He released the triplet, giving each of them different orders. He also gave them some items. With this, if things went south, he could escape, taking Clouse with him. He planned to keep his space element hidden throughout their time there, and only when he was certain that they wouldn't be in any trouble would he use it. 3 hours later. The ceremony had started and all the guests were present. It was held in the Braun family compound, and they were currently seated in the open garden. The Robertson family was already present, speaking animatedly to each other. Gregory could be seen with a bright smile on his face. he was dressed elegantly, and his handsome face with golden hair and eyes were sparkling. Most of the people around were speaking of the marriage as they joked and laughed. Luthra was escorted into the place, and just when they were about to start the rites, Gray and Clouse arrived. "Stop this wedding," Clouse said as he walked into the place. His voice attracted everyone's attention as they turned to look at the owner. When the head of the Braun family saw Clouse walking over with a confident demeanor, his expression changed. "What are you doing here?" he asked with a dark expression. "To stop this wedding. Luthra doesn't want this, you should know this," Clouse said. His words not only angered Luthra's father, but those from the Robertson family frowned as well. They didn't think there would be such a scene here. "Lotha, what's the meaning of this?" an old man from the Robertson family asked with a cold expression. Lotha, the head of the Braun family, and Luthra's father turned to look at the man. "I will handle it, don't worry about it," he said coolly before turning to Clouse. "Leave, before I run out of patience," he said coldly. "No, I'll not allow you to marry Luthra off to someone who doesn't even deserve her." Clouse refused, to the surprise of most of the people there. His words angered Gregory, who stood up. As a proud individual, how could he not be deserving of Luthra? "What nonsense are you spouting, rat?" Gregory asked with an irritated voice. "You're not worthy of her, and you know it. You don't love her, you only want her because she's beautiful." Clouse stepped forward and said. In terms of facial appearance, he had the edge. However, with Gray standing next to him, his handsome face didn't really show that much. But compared to anyone else present, he was superior. "What did you say?" Gregory asked, walking over. He was in the 5th stage of the Sage Plane, and Clouse was in the 2nd stage. The difference in strength between the duo was quite large given how hard it was to advance in the Sage Plane. "You're not worthy of her," Clouse replied. "And you are?" Gregory asked. "Naturally." Clouse nodded without a second thought. Lotha wanted to walk over, but Luthra's mother held onto him, shaking her head. She wanted to see how far Clouse was willing to go for her daughter. Although she knew from the start that Luthra opposed the marriage, she couldn't stop her husband. However, with an opportunity arising, she didn't want to let it slip. Gray hadn't said a word since he came, only watching beside Clouse. He would only speak if the need arises. Clouse has been doing a good job so far, so he wasn't bothered. "Ha ha, a lady want-to-be dares to speak in front of me. You should be in your faction, playing with your fellow girls," Gregory mocked. Being in a faction designed only for girls has made Clouse the subject of mockery. However, he knew full well that most of them were mocking him because they were jealous of him. He had the opportunity of seeing beauties every single day, a dream of most young men, so it was natural that they would envy his position. "Nice one," Clouse said sarcastically. He didn't even show any signs of anger when he heard his words. Clouse had been shameless for so long, and this wasn't even close to any of the things that could aggravate him. Gregory and his entourage laughed when they saw this. 5 youths in the Sage Plane were standing beside him. Gray was in the 3rd stage of the Sage Plane, with Clouse with him. If a fight broke out, they might be able to overpower Gregory with numbers. "Why don't we fight for her? What do you say? You have the higher cultivation stage, so you should be confident in defeating me," Clouse said with a mischievous smile. Gregory knew Clouse was trying to goad him into challenging for Luthra. "Why would I fight you over what's mine?" he asked with mocking laughter. Chapter 903. Clouse was taken aback when he heard this. He thought Gregory would let his pride take over and he would agree to fight with him for Luthra. He didn't give up after this setback. Another chance would present itself, and all he needed to do was to be patient. "Now, if you don't mind, I have a marriage to complete," Gregory said as he turned around. Clouse chuckled, as expected, refusing a challenge. The real geniuses don't refuse such. "But what can I say, after staying under the protection of your family for so long, it is normal. I wonder what the condition of your home would be without your family support." Gregory paused when he heard this. He turned to look at Clouse with an annoyed expression. He looked around and noticed the crowd were all staring, whispering among themselves. When his gaze met his father's, he saw the disappointment in his eyes. Although his father was annoyed by Clouse coming to disrupt the wedding, he felt embarrassed for having such a disgrace of a son. Clouse was only in the second stage of the sage plane while he was in the fifth. He didn't even use the excuse of having a higher stage and not wanting to bully Clouse. Instead, he outright refused the challenge. Against a powerful opponent, it would be deemed wise, but against one weaker, it was only cowardice, except he gave the right excuses. "You want to challenge me, for her?" Gregory turned around with resolution. Seeing his father's expression gave him a change of heart. Besides, he was confident in his abilities. Clouse nodded, not showing any signs of backing down. Just as Gregory was about to step forward, Luthera's father, stepped forward. "Hold on, since you two want to fight for my daughter's hand, it's only right I approve of it," he said calmly. If both youths fought on their own without him saying anything and then gave out his daughter to the winner, it would mean he didn't have a say in this. Even if he wanted to create a good bond with the Robertson family, he was not going to bring down the dignity of his family in the process. Since Gregory has agreed to fight, then he would be the one in charge, not Gregory or Clouse. "It's only right you do this, Uncle." Clouse was the first to speak up, wearing a bright smile on his face. The first part of his plan had been achieved. With this, the rest will fall perfectly into place. Well, so he hoped. From when Clouse and Gray stepped into the Braun family compound till now, Luthera hadn't taken her eyes off Clouse's figure. Other than taking a glance at Gray, who was standing beside him when he came in, she kept her full focus on him. He was the only shining light in this dark world of hers. Lothar gave the order for the place to be adjusted so a battle could take place. An Earth Elementalist stepped forward to set up a platform for the battle. He stepped on the platform and gave out the rule. There would be 2 rounds of battles, and each individual would give whatever stipulations they wanted, so long as it was not out of line. The winner of both rounds will be the victor, but if it ends in a tie, then he would be the one to state the rules for the final battle. Clouse and Gregory accepted this. Who would go first? Lothar looked at the duo. Gregory threw a glance at Clouse. "He'll go first. I don't want to take advantage of him." Lothar nodded and turned to Clouse. "The person with the most handsome friend wins." Clouse almost blurted this out, but seeing how serious the situation was, he swallowed back his words. He couldn't afford to annoy Luthera's father. The fact that he agreed to this already seemed to be his limit. "I challenge you to a duel." He stood facing Gregory. Being 3 stages below his opponent didn't make him give up. He was confident in his ability. The thought of putting Gray against him came to mind, but this was his battle, and he had to be the one to fight it. This was one of the few times Gray saw Clouse this serious. Could it be that he's really in love? He took a long hard look at Clouse, before moving his gaze to the person making his friend take such a risk. Luthera was a beautiful girl with black hair and brown eyes. Her oval face and still somewhat chubby chick from baby fat made her look cute. She was not the most beautiful girl Gray had seen, but she was still beautiful, at least on the same level as Alice, if not above her. Gregory laughed when he heard Clouse challenging him. "You weakling, you think you can beat me?" He mocked. "Okay, to be fair, why don't the 2 of you fight me?" Clouse almost burst out laughing when he heard this. It wasn't even certain if Gregory could beat him, yet he wanted Gray to join him. If that wasn't suicide, he didn't know what is. "Only I am enough," Clouse said coolly. Fighting against Gregory was a huge risk for him. He knew Gregory was a talented figure, and he had heard of some of his battles as well, so he knew he wasn't weak. If he lost this round, all Gregory had to do was come up with some insane stipulation in the next round, and he would win. Clouse had to win this battle. It was a must for him. Losing it would be detrimental to his cause. Lothar looked at Clouse. He shook his head before stepping off the platform. He called an elder from the family to preside over the battle. "This is a friendly battle, no deaths allowed. Of course, Injuries can't be avoided, but no life-threatening attacks should be used. Once you can't fight anymore, admit defeat, the elder said to the two. They nodded, prepared for battle. Chapter 904. Gregory locked his eyes on Clouse, staring at him coldly. Clouse stared at him. He felt a little pressured since the distance in strength was by no means small. Fighting above stages in the Sage plane was not the same as when he was in the Overlord plane. With the increase in plane, it became harder for geniuses to transcend stages when fighting. When in the Origin plane, he could easily transcend 3 stages, especially against an individual with a lower elemental grade, but as he got to the Overlord plane, things started to become harder. The Sage plane was even harder than the Overlord plane. Should I have allowed Gray to fight this battle? Doubt flashed through his head. To be honest, he was more confident in Gray's abilities compared to his own. He couldn't be blamed. Gray had proved times without number that he had no problems transcending stages, and from how freakish Gray was, he knew for a fact that Gray had complete confidence in defeating Gregory. He hastily threw the doubt out of his head. This was his battle. He was going to fight it, win or lose, he would deal with the consequences. Gray respected Clouse's decision and watched from the side. Everyone from the side waited patiently for the battle to start. After both fighters told the elder they were ready, he called for the start of the battle. Clouse released water arrows the moment the battle started. Gregory was a dual elementalist, having the earth and lightning element. An earth wall appeared in front of him to block the attack. After blocking, he sent a lightning bolt at Clouse. Clouse used his ice ability to create an ice screen that blocked the attack. He retaliated with his water element, not waiting for Gregory to take the upper hand. Gregory had a higher explosive power thanks to the lightning element. They quickly exchanged moves with no one getting the advantage. It was still early on, but Gray noticed Clouse had improved compared to the way he last saw him. Gregory looked at Clouse, a little surprised. He didn't think Clouse would be able to put up with him. Not just him, everyone from the crowd was surprised. Clouse was 3 stages below Gregory, yet he was going toe-to-toe with him. It was quite something to watch, and it already showed who was more talented. You're impressive, but if this is what you're depending on, then I'm sorry, you will lose, Gregory said. Clouse had always been one to talk whenever fighting, but this time, he remained silent. He placed his full focus on the battle ahead of him. This was a battle he couldn't afford to take lightly. Gregory shrouded himself with lightning as he bolted towards Clouse. Clouse raised a water wall in front of him. It didn't stop Gregory, as expected, but he didn't do it to stop him in the first place. As Gregory got close to him, he blew out an icy wind from his mouth. Gregory, who was covered with droplets of water when he breezed through the water wall, felt his body get heavier, and before he knew it, he started to freeze. The lightning coat around him started to fall off. Clouse sent ice spikes at him during this period. Gregory hurriedly protected himself with an earth dome as he hastily broke free from the ice. It took some time, but he managed to break free from it. Clouse broke apart the earth dome, but just as it was falling apart, a lightning bolt shot at him. Ice armor covered his body from head to toe when he saw this. Bang! The lightning bolt struck him in the chest, sending him flying. However, he wasn't injured since the ice armor took most of the attack. It didn't even crack, only showing a black spot from the burn from the lightning strike. It quickly faded off after the ice recovered. He used the special ice ability of the Sealy to create the ice armor, but he only used the recovery part of it. After getting to the Sage plane, his knowledge and control over his ice ability increased. In the entire Moonlight faction, he was one of the best ice users. He had mastered most of the difficult techniques, even some that elemental venerables find hard to master. As long as it had to do with ice, he had it under his grasp. One of the reasons the elder agreed to come with him was because of how highly talented Clouse was. They had been trying to get him to learn a technique, but he had been running from it. The condition for following him here was that he would have to learn this technique. When Clouse accepted, they were elated, and this elder followed him without many squabbles. Clouse tapped his right foot on the platform and it started to freeze. Gregory, seeing this, raised multiple earth pillars on the platform. A large earth orb glowing with a brownish light appeared in the air and fell to the platform. Clouse created a large hand made from water. When the glowing orb entered the water, it continued descending, but a few meters before touching the platform, it stopped. Gregory struck the water with a lightning bolt, hitting the orb in the process. The orb exploded out and earth spikes sprouted from the ground while the air around the platform started to get heavier. Clouse noticed this and knitted his brow. Fighting in such a condition was no good for him. Once the battle got too long, his physical body would be exhausted from the increased weight it had to sustain. Gray, watching from the side, was amazed that Gregory could use the gravitational force field. Although it wasn't as powerful as his own, it would become more effective as time went on. Gray's own, on the other hand, had an instant impact and could easily turn the tides of a battle. This one, on the other hand, will only work against people without strong physical bodies. Most elementalists had weak physiques, so it was quite useful. Chapter 905. Gray wasn't the only one watching the battle with interest. Every single individual there was watching the battle. The Robertson family had a dark expression. Yes, Gregory had a slight advantage, but Clouse was 3 stages below him. This shouldn't have been a battle that would last so long. His father snorted coldly as he watched the fight. The crowds were entertained, not expecting to watch such a thrilling battle on a day like this. They couldn't ask for anything more. Luthera was shaking from anxiety. It was normal, since her future depended on the outcome of the battle. Some people from her family hoped Clouse wins, while others were on the side of Gregory. There were a few neutral people who didn't care about the outcome of the battle. "Who do you think will win?" Luthera's mother asked Lotha. "Gregory. That kid is more talented, but Gregory will win, barring there are no mishaps." Lotha replied without thinking. He had already seen both of them use their skills. Clouse was more skilled, but the difference in strength was just too much. If there were no mistakes, then Gregory would be victorious. "I think that kid has a surprise in store." Luthera's mother picked Clouse to win the fight. They weren't the only ones discussing. People in the crowd did the same as well. Gray sat down as he listened to their suggestions. "Void, what do you think?" he asked. "I'm not sure yet. Clouse seems to be hiding some of his strength. He will only use it when necessary. That guy hasn't gone all out as well, so it's hard to call. Of course, I want Clouse to be victorious." Void replied. Gray agreed with Void's words. He also felt the battle was very close and it was unknown who would win now. Only after the battle reached its peak will they know who would win. Clouse and Gregory continued their battle, exchanging moves. They were still testing each other out. Even though each had displayed some powerful attacks, none of them had tried to take an advanced attack. It didn't take long before Gregory used a large-scale attack. The gravity of the platform was already affecting Clouse's movement, so he felt it was time for him to use his bigger attacks. Multiple lightning bolts fell from the sky. While he moved, covered with lightning, he paced across the platform, causing a spectacle. Clouse didn't let the pressure of the gravitational force field affect his reasoning. He created an ice dome that blocked the lightning bolts while preparing an ice needle for Gregory. If this attack connects, then he might win the fight sooner than he thought. Of course, it wasn't definite since Gregory might be able to fight off the cold. After all, he does have the advantage in cultivation stage. Clouse locked onto Gregory and released the needle. Its small size made it Clouse's fastest attack. Gregory, who was moving quickly across the entire platform, suddenly stopped. He started to show signs of freezing. Most of the people below the sage plane were stunned by the sudden turn of events, but those at the sage plane or above saw Clouse attack. Although those in the sage plane barely saw it, they sensed it only after it hit Gregory. Seeing Gregory's current condition, Clouse created a large snow-shaped looking ice that he released into the air. It exploded and snow started to fall. The effects of the gravitational force field died down instantly as the temperature of the platform dropped. Gregory was fighting against Clouse's attack, and with the sudden decrease in the temperature, he started to freeze at a faster pace. Clouse sent out a water orb in his direction. When the orb got to him, it started to spread across him, and he was soon covered by ice, turning into an ice statue. He won? Someone from the crowd asked. Staring at Gregory's present condition, it was easy to assume that Clouse had defeated him, but those at the peak knew the battle was far from over. A lightning bolt fell from the sky and slammed into the ice statue. Cracks appeared on the ice statue, and they started to run down the entire statue. Before long, Gregory appeared before everyone once again. It was worth the shot. Clouse shrugged internally. He knew this wasn't going to stop Gregory, but it didn't stop him. At least he knew for a fact that he could slow him down with the ice needle. "You're a hateful fellow." Gregory gritted his teeth, anger showing in his eyes. Clouse was the one who seemed to have the first major blow, and this impacted his pride. He was already feeling infuriated by the fact that he couldn't beat Clouse up easily. Now he suffered from Clouse's attack as well. It was annoying to him, to say the least. "You're not impressive, at all." Clouse finally spoke, and his words sent Gregory hysterical. Gray and Void chuckled when they saw this. Clouse could be said to have mastered the act of infuriating his opponents. Even when he doesn't want to, he seems to annoy them. Making people more upset was a gift Clouse had honed over the years. It had proven to be useful on some occasions. Gregory rushed at Clouse, but Clouse used an ice dome to protect himself. When Gregory got close, he unleashed an attack. To his surprise, the attack didn't break the ice dome. However, he saw something shocking. The ice retaliated, sending an attack almost at the same power as his attack his way. Not expecting it, and being in such close range, he was forced back. While he was trying to get his footing, Clouse jumped out of the ice dome and attacked with a large ice sword that connected with Gregory on his ribs. Gregory's face distorted from the pain, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His figure was sent flying, crashing into the platform. Clouse rushed over, hoping to continue his assault, but Gregory popped back up with a stronger aura, sending a lightning spear at Clouse. Clouse blocked it, but he was pushed a few meters back. Standing, both fighters faced off. The battle was starting to pick up intensity. Chapter 906. The crowd noticed the change in the demeanor of both fighters and knew that things were about to reach its peak. It didn't take long before attacks started to fly across the platform from one end to another. Clouse used his ice ability to the fullest, creating multiple attacks simultaneously. He used one of the Moonlight faction's top techniques, and a moon seemingly seemed to appear behind him, giving off a dazzling glow. He looked like a god in this appearance. With the moon behind him, his ice ability's power would see a 10% increase. It might not look like much, but in a battle such as this, it might be what he needed to turn the tide in his favor. Gregory used a long lightning sword, trying to slash apart the ice moon behind Clouse. Clouse naturally wouldn't give him the chance to do that. He blocked it with his ice wall, but to his surprise, the wall cracked from the attack. His attack power increased. He was shocked. However, Gregory's attack power didn't see an increase, but the technique he used was superior to his previous attacks, hence the increase in his attack power. Clouse's ice ability increased by 10%, so a defensive ice wall he set up was stronger than what he previously did. Gregory had not been able to break through the ice wall before, yet he cracked this one which was stronger. Boom! Bang! Bam! The fight continued, and even those from the Robertson family couldn't hide their shock at Clouse's strength. Clouse was fighting against Gregory, and they were almost equals after he created that ice moon behind him. Even his attack power saw an increase, something all the experts from the Sage Plane and above noticed. The Moonlight faction is frightening. Lothar commented when he saw it. Of course, they are a top faction, what did you expect? Luthor's mother remarked. Lothar didn't comment any further as he focused on the fight. Clouse created a large ice pillar that tried to smack Gregory, but Gregory countered, using the long lightning sword to cut the ice pillar into two. The lightning sword extended, continuing its assault in Clouse's direction. The ice wall in front of Clouse finally gave way and he was sent flying. He crashed into the platform, bouncing off it twice. but he quickly picked himself up before sending a series of ice shards at Gregory, who was coming at him. Gregory was forced to stop and defend. He couldn't rush at Clouse since he would risk harming himself. He was fending off against the ice shards when he noticed something glow. Moving his head to the side, he was scratched by something moving fast on his cheek, and he started to bleed. This time, he managed to dodge Clouse's ice needle. Clouse hid it in the ice shards, making him lose focus before sending it. Unfortunately, Gregory was alert and dodged it. The place he was injured soon froze, but since the attack didn't penetrate, the freezing stopped after a while. The lightning sword he was holding suddenly increased in size, and he swung it at Clouse. The sword destroyed all the ice shards before getting to Clouse. Clouse created a sword of his own. It was made from ice, and with the help of the moon behind him, it was one of his strongest ice swords yet. Both swords collided, and a powerful wind spread across the platform due to the impact of the attack. They swung it at each other repeatedly. Gregory suddenly created an earth hammer that slammed the ground. The platform shook from the attack, and it started to take a different shape. Clouse, seeing this, didn't want to be outdone, so he spread out his hand and water started to fill up the platform. "Two can play this game," he said internally. Gregory knew Clouse wouldn't allow him to do what he wanted, so he gave up on the ideas and continued attacking with his lightning and earth element. Clouse didn't ease up even though Gregory stopped his plan. He felt maybe he would continue later on. While trying to block one attack, he was hit on the back by an earth pillar that appeared from the side. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, aching from the pain. This was one of the longest one-on-one battles he had fought, and things were looking too good for him at the moment. Even though he pushed Gregory to the limit, he was still coming up short. Gregory was capitalizing on his advantage perfectly. As the battle continued, Gray finally knew Clouse would lose. "A shame, he fought well," he said to Void. Void nodded. The experts from the Robertson and Braun families felt some sort of pity for Clouse. Even after trying so hard, he came off short. If he were to be in the third stage of the Sage Plane, the outcome of the battle would have been different. The chances of him winning would have been higher than that of Gregory's. A few minutes later, Clouse fell to the ground, defeated. Gregory wasn't in any better condition, but he was still standing. The battle lasted for over 25 minutes, and both fighters fought to their heart's content. The elder from the Braun family appeared on the platform and stopped Gregory from attacking any further. Gregory wins. Only after announcing the results did everyone come back to their senses. Most of the people felt pity for Clouse, who fell short after putting on such a display. Gregory might have won, but Clouse was the one who would be remembered whenever people spoke of this battle. Gray climbed up the platform and picked Clouse up. "You did good, buddy." "I still lost," Clouse said with a dejected expression. "You'll win the next, I'm sure of it," Gray consoled him. He was about to take Clouse off the platform when Gregory stopped them. "My turn." His voice echoed across the place. "Who? What do you mean?" Gray turned around. "It's my turn to speak about the stipulations of the battle," Gregory said with a grin on his face. Chapter 907. Gray raised his brow when he heard this. He didn't believe Gregory would want to start the next round almost immediately. He didn't even want to give Clouse the chance of resting. Clouse looked at Gray and let out a self-deprecating laugh. "Go ahead, speak," he said with difficulty. Gregory chuckled when he saw Clouse in this condition. He was vexed that it took him so long and he had to exert almost all his strength to take out Clouse, but he was satisfied when he saw Clouse's present look. "He's already beaten, why don't I beat up his friend as well?" he thought internally as he looked at Gray with an evil smile. "Since I've already beaten you to such a state, why don't we allow others to fight the last battle? The geniuses from my camp against those from yours," he said with a sly grin. When the crowd heard his terms, they turned to take a look at the Robertson family camp, and after a rough count, there were 17 geniuses in the Sage Plane. One of them was in the 7th stage of the Sage Plane. The crowd couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. Gregory's stipulation wasn't giving Clouse any way out. What was worse was that he was dragging Gray with him. Clouse and Gray exchanged glances, and with a nod from Gray, he calmed down significantly. Since Gray nodded, it meant that he had confidence in defeating these people, no matter their numbers. Clouse knew of Gray's ability with multiple opponents, but he was still a little afraid, hence he turned to look at Gray. "I have only one person, isn't it a bit unfair to fight against so many people from your side?" Clouse tried to get Gregory to reduce the numbers. "My round, my rules." Gregory didn't leave any leeway for Clouse to get away. Clouse gritted his teeth before nodding, "Fine. Gray, it's all up to you now. I'm sorry I placed all my worries on your head," Clouse said with a forced smile. "Don't worry, rest up, there's still the third round," Gray said softly. When the top experts overheard Gray's words, they were stunned. The confidence in his words was evident. The fact that he said there's still the third round meant that he felt he could win this round. Gregory laughed when he heard Gray's words. "Ha ha, confident fool. You're even more arrogant than that bastard. Since I'm fighting so many people alone, can I use a special technique that improves strength?" Gray asked. Gregory thought about it for less than a second before nodding. "You can." Even if Gray exhausted his core, he didn't feel that he would be able to bring out strength above the 5th stage of the Sage Plane. Against his brother who was in the 7th stage, Gray was as good as defeated. "Thank you," Gray said before standing in the spot Clouse stood. When Clouse left the platform, Luthra approached him. "Why are you taking such risks?" she asked softly, her voice cracked from trying to keep in her tears. "I can't let you get married to such a moron." "Don't worry, we'll be fine," Clouse consoled her with a smile. Luthra looked at him. She saw a confident smile on his face, one that she had seen way too often. She didn't know if he was trying to console her, but she decided to have confidence in him. "I truth you," she said with a smile. Gray was more focused on the battle at hand, so he didn't have the time to look at Clouse and Luthra. When Gregory stepped off the platform, only 2 people from the Robertson family climbed on. They were both in the 2nd stage of the Sage Plane. Gregory wanted to object, but his father's stern glance warded him off. His father was embarrassed that his family would have to send out so many young geniuses to fight against one, so he decided to send 2 of lower cultivation stages. This would make it seem like he was trying to go easy on Gray, while also making sure they would get the victory. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Gray looked at the duo in front of him. He moved his head to the side to look behind them, seemingly waiting for more of them to step forward. To his surprise, only 2 of them were out. His actions didn't escape the eyes of the experts in the area. "Is he waiting for the others to come out as well?" Luthra asked Clouse when she saw this. She was also in the Sage Plane, the 1st stage. "He can beat them all, and I'm not joking when I say this," Clouse said with utmost confidence. "Who?" A confused expression appeared on Luthra's face. One person beating so many geniuses, alone. It was hard to believe. "What are you looking for?" the duo standing on the platform asked Gray. "Nothing, come, I want to deal with you 2 quick, I have places to be." Gray invited the duo to attack. They exchanged glances and attacked. Gray was looking down on them, and they were going to make him regret his actions. The duo were water elementalists. With a wave of their hands, a jet stream of water shot at Gray, being enforced by 2 people. Its power was above the 3rd stage of the Sage Plane. Gray raised a single finger, and a small blue fireball appeared on it. He sent it into the jet stream of water coming his way. When the fireball connected to the stream, it heated it up, and before everyone's shocked eyes, the stream dried up before it got to him. What was more amazing was that the fireball didn't stop after this, it continued in the duo's direction. The duo were shocked, but they reacted accordingly, creating an ice wall before them. They were boosting the strength of each other, so the defensive power was more than when they used it separately. Gray's little fireball touched it, and the eyes of everyone in the place almost popped out. Chapter 908. Incredible. Luthra muttered, unable to hold in her shock. She wasn't the only one who was shocked, the entire crowd was stunned. Gray's attack flashed through the ice wall like it was transparent and went straight for the duo. It exploded, sending them off the platform. With a single attack, Gray not only neutralized their attacks, but he also defeated them. One had to know they were two people, and Gray was one. Even if he was a stage above them, achieving such a feat was still something that shouldn't be this easy. Lothar and Luthra's mother exchanged glances. The people from the Robertson family were alarmed when they saw this. The top expert stared at Gray in amazement. What Gray did there was a very unique skill. He compressed the fire orb to the limit. It might look small, but its power was far above a normal fireball Gray would use. From how easily Gray made it look, the experts knew Gray was not a simple individual. If he were the one who fought against Gregory, they could already tell that he would win. "See, I told you. He's a freak," Clouse said with a shrug. The higher they go, the further Gray leaves them behind. Even when they were trying their best to catch up, it was still impossible. Gray couldn't be classified among geniuses. He was a genius among geniuses, an abnormal genius to be precise. "Isn't he too overpowered?" Luthra asked. "He's just getting started," Clouse said. The Robertson family could still send out the rest of their youths. Either they did that, or they admitted defeat, giving Clouse this round. Doing that would look disgraceful to them. This was the round they were certain to win, yet they lost it. Although the battle was between Gregory and Clouse, Gregory represented their family, so they were still a part of it. The family head could never accept such a disgraceful act. With 2 out, there were only 15 young geniuses left. He looked at 3 youths. 2 were in the second stage of the sage plane while the last was in the third stage. All 3 stood up and walked over to the platform. According to Gregory's stipulation, Gray would have to fight against all of their geniuses. They were already being kind, not sending all of them to fight him at once. Gray looked at the 3 figures standing before him. He turned to look at Lothar, contemplating if it was safe to use his space element. "I still have those high-grade space talismans. If things get worse, I'll use them while Clouse Elder stalls," he thought internally. In the presence of experts above the sage plane, he didn't have confidence in his spatial ability. They could easily fish him out of any spatial tunnel he creates. Only one made by a top expert would be able to help him. When the trio appeared on the platform, they were just about to attack when Gray suddenly vanished. He appeared beside them and attacked with the fire element. The person in the third stage of the sage plane was a young lady. She was the only one who noticed Gray and acted accordingly. She tried to help the other 2, but Gray didn't give them the chance as he sent them flying, crashing off the platform. They weren't eliminated since technically, it wasn't said in any place that they would be defeated if thrown out of the platform, but they didn't have the strength to step back on the platform. When sending them flying, Gray always uses a certain force to ensure they were left either unconscious or close to losing consciousness. "A space elementalist," the young lady muttered. "You have a keen eye," Gray said sarcastically. The young lady attacked. She was a wind elementalist. The wind blades she sent at Gray were easily evaded by Gray as he blinked, appearing a few meters away from her. He attacked, but she was fast and quickly dodged the attack. Gray didn't give her any chance of attacking as he continued his assault on her. In the space of 1 minute, he had attacked her over 20 times. She had blocked a few but had been hit by most. She was soon sent out of the platform by Gray, unconscious. The entire place was flabbergasted, except for Clouse and Void, who already knew of Gray's abilities. "How's he this powerful?" someone from the crowd asked. The experts from the Robertson family had sour expressions as they looked at Gray. Those from the Braun family were stunned. Gray was even more freakish than Clouse. They weren't even on the same level. Yes, Clouse would defeat the people he just defeated, but there was no way he would be able to make it look this easy. In fact, Gray was making it seem like they were going easy on him. If not for the fact that they knew the Robertson family wouldn't want to bring such humiliation to themselves, they would have believed they were letting Gray win on purpose. Wow! Just wow! How did you know him? Luthra was not able to contain her surprise. Gray's abilities were something she hadn't seen before. He was only in the 3rd stage of the Sage plane, but he beat someone in the same stage as if they were not in the same plane, much less stage. A long story. I'll tell you after this. Clouse said, a proud smile plastered on his face. He was throwing glances at the Robertson camp. Of their 17 geniuses, Gray had defeated 5, leaving only 12 left. The fact that he beat 5 so easily meant that he could continue in such a manner if they didn't send out more people. 3 people were no match for Gray, and 4 obviously wouldn't. The family head of the Robertson family had the darkest face in the place. Even after tactfully sending out opponents, Gray was sweeping the ground with such ease. He looked at 5 people, all 5 were in the 4th stage of the Sage plane. Chapter 909. The 5 individuals walked into the platform. They knew the plan, and it was to make sure they beat the hell out of Gray. There was no plan of even going easy on him. The family head of the Robertson family wanted to make sure Gray was beaten down for humiliating the geniuses of their family. When they stepped on the platform, a few of them were recognized by some of the people in the crowd. They were famous geniuses of the Robertson family. Of the 5, the 2 young ladies were the most troublesome. Both were dual elementalists, and each of them had the space element with another element. One of them had amber hair, she had the space and darkness element, while the other one with golden hair had the space and the lightning element. The other 3 young men were single elementalists, each having the wind, earth, and lightning element. Gray stared at his incoming opponents. He didn't feel any pressure from them since he knew he could still defeat them. He had used his space element, so he naturally couldn't use it to surprise them any longer. All he needed to do now was to fight them without using any surprises. Well, he still had a few he could use. The young ladies went to the side, and the 3 young men were the first to rush at him. Gray attacked them with his fire element, blasting 2 away. The lightning elementalist managed to dodge his attack and retaliate. Gray blocked the lightning bolt coming his way. After blocking it with his earth wall, he countered. The lightning elementalist was still changing blows with Gray when the 2 young ladies moved. They both vanished simultaneously. Gray's eyes darted around as he tried to predict where they would appear. He also focused his full attention on the space around him. He planned to attack whenever he felt any spatial ripples. He soon sensed it and attacked his right, but it was a feint by the girls. The lightning elementalist was assisted by the earth and wind elementalist who appeared from the side. They started their attacks on Gray, who was fighting against the lightning elementalist while trying to locate where the 2 young ladies would reappear. Gray was forced to stop attacking since he couldn't be careless without knowing where the young ladies would reappear. He had sent some ripples in the space around him, but the young ladies seemed to only appear and disappear almost instantly, making it hard for Gray to attack them. However, their current motive was simple: distract Gray, and they were doing a good job so far. While Gray was trying to locate them, the lightning and wind elementalist were unleashing a series of attacks on Gray. The earth elementalist wasn't out of the picture as well. He also joined the others on the attacking spree as well. Gray quickly figured out what the young ladies were doing and decided to leave them alone and focus his attention on those before him. With a blink, he disappeared from where he was standing, and just as he appeared, he sensed a lightning attack heading in his direction. It was almost impossible for him to dodge. The attack came from the void. Gray knew this was one of the young ladies' attacks. He braced himself for the attack and was pushed back by it. When the attack hit him, the lightning elementalist and the wind elementalist did a combined attack that pushed Gray further back. This made those from the Robertson family nod in approval. Since Gray stepped on the platform, this was the first time he was being hit, and it gave those fighting against him the hope that they could defeat him. Luthra, who was beside Clouse, looked at him. Will he be okay? Clouse looked at her worried expression and laughed lightly. That's nothing. He'll beat them up. Even if they all attack simultaneously, he will beat them. Clouse's absolute confidence in Gray amazed Luthra. She didn't even think Clouse was this confident in himself, yet he was so certain about another person. "How can you be so certain?" she couldn't help but ask. "After hanging out with Gray, I'm already used to him performing unbelievable feats. At this point, I'm numb to it. If he even says he can defeat an elemental venerable at this point, I wouldn't doubt him. That's how much confidence I have in him." Clouse replied with a serious expression. Luthra looked at Clouse, before turning to look at Gray, who had steadied himself on the platform once again, and blocked all the attacks that were sent his way. The young ladies were troublesome to deal with. They made it hard for him to use the space element. Of course he could still use it occasionally, but they had managed to restrict his movements thanks to their well-planned attacks that always forced him out of the spatial tunnels he creates. Gray hastily switched strategies. Since they wanted to stop him from using the space element, then he would use his unparalleled speed. His physical speed was not something they could mess with. He released his gravitational force field and everyone on the platform felt a powerful tug that dragged them down. Even the two young ladies who were going through the space fell to the ground. Gray's body was covered with red lightning and he vanished. He had been using the normal silver lightning, and the sudden appearance of the red lightning stunned everyone. "How can he use two types of lightning?" Luthra asked in shock. "Try to contain yourself, you might die from too much shock when he's done. Be like me, I'm no longer impressed with whatever he does. For him, anything that shouldn't be possible to others is possible to him." Clouse consoled her. While they were speaking, Gray's figure exploded out with insane speed, and before those on the platform could regain their bearings, he attacked. With a kick, he sent the lightning elementalist off the platform and turned to the wind elementalist. Chapter 9-10. The wind elementalist hurriedly moved away. Although it was difficult for him, he managed to get away from Gray's attack range. The earth elementalist was the one who felt the littlest pressure, so he hurriedly protected the two young ladies since they were their hope in winning this battle. He also used the same technique as Gregory as he tried to forcefully counter Gray's gravitational force field. This caused a reaction, just like the time Gray used it in the Horned race, and he hurriedly stopped it. However, it managed to put Gray off as well, making him stop using his gravitational force field. The two young ladies stood up, standing beside the earth elementalist. The wind elementalist walked over to them. "This guy is trouble," he said when he arrived. The lightning elementalist had been sent out of the platform by Gray's kick, and they could all see the power in the attack and were sure that he was injured from the kick. There was no way he could fight again in this battle. The two young ladies exchanged glances and nodded with serious expressions. Watching Gray from the side and fighting against him were two different feelings. From the side, it felt like Gray wasn't all that powerful and that the people they sent out weren't all that competent, but now that they were facing Gray, they felt like they were standing in front of a beast. Gray stared at them once again, his eyes darting around, seemingly planning something. Those watching the battle were staring at Gray like a freak. The scene of him using the red lightning flashed through their heads. To some of the people around, this was the first time they were hearing of or even seen something like this, but to the old experts present, they knew that there were some special people who could actually use two varieties of the same element. They were quite rare, rarer than an elementalist with 4 or more elements. This kid is going to be terrifying in the future. To think he has such a frightening ability after having multiple elements. An elder from the Braun family commented. Lothar nodded. He couldn't deny Gray's strength. Seeing Gray, he knew his background couldn't be ordinary. He turned to look at Clouse once again. Could someone who was friends with such a figure be ordinary as well? His guess was no, but he had done a thorough check on Clouse and found out he only appeared out of nowhere some months back. Before then, it was like he never existed. This was the reason he took him for one of those geniuses who only came to light after a lucky encounter. But now that he saw Gray, he started to have a change of heart. If Gray were to be the one who came to him from the start because of his daughter, then he might have considered not accepting the proposal from the Robertson family. This boy is something else. Luthra's mother exclaimed. He can't be categorized as a normal genius. Lowther commented. The crowd were pumped as they watched Gray. Even though he was only standing at the moment, they were excited and could feel their blood boiling, especially the youths. Some wished they could be as cool and talented as Gray was. They didn't wish to be as handsome as him since there was no hope, but a few ladies had some ideas about him. If they could marry him and bear a child for him, then the child would most definitely have his amazing facial features. Those from the Robertson family went over to pick up the lightning elementalist. He joined the list of people Gray knocked unconscious in the battle so far. The two young ladies vanished once again, leaving the earth and wind elementalist. Gray attacked the duo. He already knew the strategy of the duo, and he was currently working on a way to stop them. It involved doing a large array that would seal the space element on the platform. This would affect him as well, but with his speed, he wasn't bothered. He created 2 inscriptions in the air, leaving the crowd flabbergasted once again. Just how many things is he capable of doing? Luthera was starting to feel like her life was a joke. She previously thought she was a genius, seeing someone like Gray put a heavy burden on her chest, and she couldn't even comprehend how someone this talented could be alive. The inscriptions reduced the pressure on Gray as the two of them focused on the young ladies. Once they stepped out of the spatial tunnel, it would attack them. This forced them to always stay in the spatial tunnel, making it impossible for them to assist the earth and wind elementalist. Having all the time he needed, Gray moved closer to the earth elementalist, and he created an earth dome to protect himself from Gray, who was approaching him. Gray smirked and clenched his fists. Arcing his hand back, he unleashed a powerful blow, and cracks ran down the earth dome. With his physical strength alone, he destroyed an earth dome set up by a 4th stage Sage Plane earth elementalist. Gray couldn't stop surprising everyone in the crowd. Clouse was laughing his heart out when he saw Luthera's expression. Even after warning her against it, and repeatedly telling her not to be surprised by Gray's abilities, she couldn't hide it. Gray was a freak of nature. His inscriptions and his physical strength helped him overwhelm the people on the platform. He didn't have to rely on his array any longer since the two young ladies had to worry about the inscriptions. Gray punched the earth dome again, and the cracks spread faster. With a 3rd blow, it fell apart, showing Gray the earth elementalist who was hiding behind it. The earth elementalist sent out an earth spike, trying to catch Gray off guard, but Gray dodged it and grabbed him in the neck. He lifted him into the air. Noticing the wind elementalist that was rushing over to stop him, he threw the earth elementalist at him. Chapter 9:11. The earth elementalist crashed into the incoming wind elementalist, who was unable to avoid him. With both figures down, Gray acted out quickly. The young ladies managed to step out of the spatial tunnel and block the attacks of the inscriptions. They knew if they continued dodging, then they would be giving Gray the freedom he wanted to win the battle easily. When they stepped out, Gray just got to where the wind and earth elementalist were lying. The young lady who had the lightning element attacked, but Gray didn't feel bothered by it. His inscription shot out an attack that blocked the attack of the young lady. He kicked forward, trying to eliminate the duo on the ground with a single attack. The earth elementalist acted quickly, and an arm made from earth appeared and blocked the attack by opening its palm. Gray didn't fuss over this as he continued his assault. A lightning bolt fell from the sky, trying to hit Gray. He dodged to the left and threw a fireball, mixed with lightning, at the earth elementalist who had gotten up. The earth elementalist blocked it, but he was forced back by the impact. The wind elementalist had gotten to his feet, but Gray managed to close the gap and unleashed his gravitational force field. He reduced the distance it could cover, and the effects of it increased. The wind elementalist tried to create some distance between them, but the gravitational force field impeded his movement speed and he was slower than usual. Just as Gray's attack was about to connect with him, he felt his hair standing on edge. Without even thinking too much, he vanished. A spear made a black shot past where Gray was previously standing. Gray looked at the spear after appearing and noticed it had spatial fluctuations. The spear was helped by the space element. This was why he didn't sense it quickly. He looked back and saw the young lady who had both the space and darkness element smirk. She was the only darkness elementalist on the platform. Gray shook his head before accessing his options once again. Originally, he wanted to eliminate the others, leaving only the space elementalists, but they were too much of a problem, so now, he wanted to change his focus to them. The 2 inscriptions he created had been destroyed by the duo as well. Now he understood why they were able to attack him. He rushed over, still acting as if he wanted to take out the Earth Elementalist. When the Earth Elementalist saw him coming, he prepared to defend against him. Gray glanced at the 2 space elementalists and noticed they were standing around 3 meters from each other. After making a rough calculation, he was certain that even if they could react, he would have enough time to take out one of them. Coming to such a conclusion, he took action immediately. Just as he sent an attack the way of the Earth Elementalist, the Wind Elementalist attacked him, sending multiple wind arrows his way. Each arrow had a small twister at the tip, making them very dangerous if they got to hit a person unguarded. The arrow was about to hit Gray when his figure suddenly blinked and changed in an instant. He appeared where one of the dual elementalist was previously standing and attacked immediately. An earth pillar rose from where the other dual elementalist was standing, raising her into the air. She was met with Gray's lightning attack that sent her flying out of the platform. At the same time this was happening, the other dual elementalist was hit by the wind elementalist's arrows and screamed in pain since she didn't try to block the attack in any way. She didn't expect it in the first place. Gray moved out quickly. Since she was injured, this was his chance to take her out of the battle. When he appeared beside her, she threw a lightning orb at him, but he evaded it easily and grabbed her hand, but she disappeared into the void. Gray smirked and a black sword appeared in his hand. He swung it, and a tear appeared in space, forcing the young lady out of the spatial tunnel she just entered. She couldn't continue through it since it had been cut in 2. This was a new technique Gray learned some time ago. It was a combination of the darkness and space element. He called it dimensional slash. It was still in the early stages, but he knew it would become a powerful move in the future once he had perfected it. The dual elementalist appeared before him once again, and he attacked, this time, a little more freely. The wind and earth elementalists were unable to react quickly due to Gray's switch skill, and were caught off guard when Gray not only sent out the first dual elementalist, but when the wind elementalist's attack hit the second dual elementalist. Gray forcing her out of space was even more shocking. Before they could react, Gray had used the earth element to create a pole that he swung at the defenseless dual elementalist who was still stunned by the sudden spatial tear in the tunnel. The pole hit her cleanly and she was sent crashing out of the platform. She landed some meters away from the other dual elementalist Gray sent flying the other time. In the space of a few seconds, Gray had turned the entire outcome of the battle once again. His victory was already confirmed against the remaining 2 people. If he defeats them, then he would have defeated a total of 10 people from the 17 people present in the camp of the Robertson family. Even if he were to lose later, this feat alone was worth remembering. Most geniuses would have failed, especially with the 2 space elementalists, but Gray managed to skillfully eliminate them. After removing the space elementalists, Gray placed his focus on the duo on the platform. It was easy to say they were not his match from the start. Within a few minutes, he eliminated both of them. Chapter 9:12. Luthera's eyes were currently opened wide, not just her eyes, but her mouth as well. This made Clouse laugh as he found her current appearance to be very funny. Did he just switch places with one of them? She asked, still shocked by the outcome of the battle. Oh, yeah. It's a move I taught him some time ago, Clouse said, flexing his muscles. Luthera rolled her eyes. She knew full well that Clouse didn't know even the simplest move of the space element, so how could he teach Gray? This was something that was possible, since he might have an insight on the space element and tell Gray who's a space elementalist about it, helping him create a skill, but this was something that only a few people could do. Most elementalists focus on their elements, so even when they tend to gain insights on other elements, they wouldn't want to speak about it with said elementalists, unless they were close to them. After all, who would want to empower their enemies? Clouse saying something like this was very possible, but from the short time she had known Clouse, she knew he played with everything. When Clouse was on the platform fighting for her was the only time she had seen him very serious. While thinking of Gray's battle, she recalled something. All 5 people Gray fought against were in the 4th stage of the Sage Plane, while he was in the 3rd. Technically, each of his opponents was ahead of him with a single stage, yet it seemed like they were below him by 2 or more. Gray dominated 5 people who each had a higher cultivation stage than himself. This was a story that was hard to believe. If most of the people here weren't present today, they wouldn't believe it if they were told about it. Clouse felt a little better after seeing Gray dominating his opponents. His only concern from the Robertson family was the young man who was in the 7th stage of the Sage Plane. He was a famous genius that even Clouse had heard of, Tius Robertson. A pure earth elementalist who had one of the strongest defenses and attacks among his peers in this region. Gray didn't think too much about them since he could boost his strength to the peak of the Sage Plane and dominate whoever they sent to the platform. The head of the Robertson family looked at the defeated group before taking a deep glance at Gray. For the first time in his life, he was impressed by a figure that wasn't from his family. It was hard not to be impressed with Gray. He was a generational talent, in fact, a historical talent. He had not seen anyone dominate so many people while being on a lower stage compared to his opponents. However, thinking of the humiliation of his family's geniuses, he couldn't help but shake his head. If they managed to groom someone of Gray's level, he would have been the proudest person alive. Alas, there can't be 2 people of such talent alive. He didn't even believe there was anyone else on Gray's level. Thinking about this, he felt a little better since this meant that Gray would also dominate other family geniuses in the same manner he was doing to his. He might be more biased toward his family members, but it didn't mean that he didn't know the truth. He looked around, and only 7 figures were left. The 7th stage Sage Plane elementalist was out of the picture since he felt sending him out would look like bullying. Yes, he accepted Gray's talent, but he didn't think for 1 minute that Gray would be able to defeat Tius. The gap in cultivation stage was just too much for even someone of Gray's level of talent to close. There were only 6 people present, for were in the 5th stage of the Sage Plane, while the other 2 were in the 6th stage. He thought about it for some time before giving a nod to the 4 in the 5th stage. He felt a bit embarrassed he had to send so many figures in the 5th stage, but sending only 2 out was a bit dangerous since Gray was somewhat unpredictable. Gray hadn't used his full strength since the start of the battle. This was something he knew too well, so he couldn't take the risk of sending out only 2 and having to watch them lose. If 2 lose, the other 2 would lose as well if he sent them over. When the crowd saw the figures that were walking over from the Robertson family, they couldn't help but shake their heads. However, they understood the reasoning behind this as well. Gray had defeated all the people sent to him, including 5 4th stage Sage Plane elementalists. The head of the Robertson family was only taking a precautionary step. As long as they won, that was all that mattered. Losing to Gray would leave the bet wide open again, and Clouse might actually end up winning. Leaving here without being able to marry Luthra would be a bigger disgrace and embarrassment to them than actually sending out all 17 people at once. Of course, the only thing that could topple that is if Gray defeated all 17 people simultaneously. Defeating them in groups gave the Robertson family a small chance to cover their shame. They could easily say they underestimated Gray, or maybe Gray hid his true strength. There were even a few people in the crowd who felt Gray was above the Sage Plane, but he used a special technique to reduce his strength that even these experts above the elemental venerable plane couldn't notice. The strongest experts here were at the peak of the elemental sovereign plane. If Gray could hide from them, then he was even more of a freak than people were thinking he was. Luthra was a little worried, but seeing Clouse' nonchalant expression, she also decided to put her faith in Gray. Maybe he will produce another miracle. Chapter 9:13. Gray stood on the platform, still as calm and poised as when he first stepped on the platform. It was as if he hadn't gone through any battles yet and was waiting for his first fight. When the 4 geniuses at the 5th stage of the Sage Plane stepped onto the platform, they looked at Gray. A bit of awe was evident in their eyes, but more hate. Gray was a genius that invoked awe from other geniuses. They didn't even have the guts to be jealous of him. He was just too far ahead of them. From his battles so far, a one-on-one battle against either of these geniuses would most definitely result in a victory for him. this was something that everyone there knew, including the geniuses that were facing him right now. They didn't dare to underestimate him, so they planned to attack together. Not wanting to give Gray the chance, he wanted to do as he willed. Of the 4 elementalists, 2 were fire elementalists, a young man and a young lady. The others were young men, one being a water elementalist, while the last was a dual elementalist, having the darkness and earth element. They all attacked simultaneously, sending out multiple attacks at Gray, who was standing in the same spot. Gray, seeing all the attacks coming his way, didn't panic. With a wave of his hand, he used the space element to dispel the attacks coming his way. Given the strength of each attack, it took a lot of effort from Gray's end to dispel them with his space element. The water elementalist sent out ice arrows at Gray, while the dual elementalist used the earth element to send Gray into the air by creating a pillar that rose from the ground quickly. The fire elementalists attacked as well. Their sync and coordination were top-notch, and it was applauded by everyone around. If not for the fact that they were fighting against someone who was 2 stages below them, it would have been a beautiful scene. Gray, who was mid-air, flipped, and with a spin, he covered himself with a fire dome that protected him from all the attacks that were coming his way. When the fire dome died down, Gray's figure was nowhere to be seen. He was fighting against a group that didn't have a space elementalist. If he didn't take advantage of being the only space elementalist on the platform, then he must be insane. The fire elementalists were alert as they looked around in search of Gray. Even though they were not space elementalists, they could still sense the ripples in space, so they could easily track Gray down whenever he came out of the spatial tunnel, as long as they focused. Unfortunately, Gray didn't plan on giving them an easy time. 2 inscriptions appeared mid-air and attacked. While they were busy dealing with the attacks, he appeared close to where the dual elementalist was standing and attacked. Whenever he fought against multiple opponents, he preferred taking out the person he felt was the most threat. The dual elementalist employed the darkness element to attack Gray when he sensed him. Gray used the lightning element to counter before drawing closer to the dual elementalist, who was on a retreat, trying to keep a good distance away from Gray. From Gray's previous battles, he knew Gray was very dangerous once he gets too close, so he didn't want to repeat the same mistake others did. The young lady, who was a fire elementalist, managed to free herself from the assault of the inscriptions within a short time and attacked Gray, who was trying to shorten the gap between himself and the dual elementalist. Gray was forced to block the attack which was coming his way. The other fire elementalist attacked as well, forcing Gray to dodge to the side, further increasing the space between him and the dual elementalist, who used the chance to also attack him with a large boulder that fell from the sky. Gray used a fire blade to slice the boulder into 2, before disappearing. When he reappeared, he was not too far from the water elementalist. He unleashed his gravitational force field, which slowed down the reaction of the water elementalist. Even though they were warned against this move, and they had been preparing to neutralize the attack, it was still very difficult for the water elementalist, since Gray made sure he used the smallest area possible. That way the strength of the gravitational force was increased by a lot. After doing this, Gray attacked the water elementalist. Just as his attack was about to hit, the fire elementalist, who was a young man, attacked, trying to stop him. Gray's figure seemed to blink, and it was as if the attack phased through him. When those from the stand saw this, they opened their mouths in shock. The old experts from the 2 families all looked at Gray as if he was a monster. The skill he just utilized was one of the hardest moves a space elementalist could utilize. Gray was still so young, yet he was already able to use it so well. The skill involved entering and coming out of space almost instantaneously. However, there would be a small gap so the attack that was sent his way would pass through. First off, it was very dangerous because if timed wrong, the space elementalist might actually appear in the middle of the attack, defenseless. That was far worse compared to taking the attack head-on. After doing this, while the entire place was still in shock, those on the platform included, Gray continued toward the water elementalist. A large hammer made from the earth element appeared, and he used it to smash the water elementalist from the side. The water elementalist was sent flying. Gray moved along as well. With his body covered with red lightning, his speed almost doubled, and he shot after the young man who was hit. He wanted to make sure he took him out. Chapter 9:14. Gray soon caught up with the water elementalist, who was mid-air, and attacked him once again. This time, the water elementalist managed to put up some form of resistance, covering himself with ice. Gray used the space element to cut through the ice with a precise attack, slicing through the space where the ice formed, creating an opening for himself. The next attack was a lightning bolt that passed through the opening and struck the young man who was still inside the dome. Gray made sure the place he opened up wasn't large, so it was almost impossible for the young man to dodge the attack without removing the dome. If he did this, however, he would be at Gray's mercy, since he wouldn't be able to stop Gray from attacking any further. Gray used a perfect attack to put the water elementalist in a dilemma where whatever option he chooses, he would still lose. In the end, the water elementalist dispelled the ice dome, hoping to block Gray's incoming attack with everything he got. Unfortunately for him, he felt a tug and was dragged towards Gray by an unknown force. Before he could even react, Gray slammed him into the ground. The water elementalist passed out cold the next instant. Everything happened so fast, from Gray appearing and using his gravitational force field, to phasing through an attack, then to sending the water elementalist flying and finally knocking him out. It didn't take over 5 seconds, which showed just how fast and decisive Gray was at making decisions. Gray accessed everything and made the best decision he felt was worth a shot, and surprisingly, with the help of his shock factor, he succeeded. In a match against 4 opponents who were all 2 stages ahead of him, Gray shockingly had the advantage. The head of the Robertson family didn't know if he should be impressed at Gray's insane abilities, or if he should be disappointed at the incompetence of his family's geniuses, but one thing was for sure: he wished someone like Gray was from his family. Gray was a little over 20 years of age from what he could tell, yet he was already so powerful, and from the fight, he knew Gray was a seasoned fighter. Compared to the geniuses from his family, Gray was miles ahead of them. In fact, he didn't mind adopting Gray at the moment and making him the future family head. Lothar looked at Gray and felt a tinge of pain in his chest. Why isn't he the one who likes her? He honestly wished Gray was the person his daughter liked. If he were the one, he would have given her to him from the start of the battle and called off everything. He knew for a fact that after this battle today, Gray's name would spread far across the entire region. Lothar was once again flabbergasted by Gray's abilities. Even Clouse showed a bit of surprise when he saw Gray phase through the attack. This was the first time he was seeing this as well. He shook his head with a wry smile. "Freak!" he muttered under his breath, but Lothar heard him. "I'm afraid he's more than a freak," she replied in a low voice. She hadn't seen anyone on Gray's level, nor had she heard of anyone like Gray. He was just too special. How could there be someone this talented? Tius took a deep glance at Gray, but after some time, he shook his head with a rueful smile. "Unfortunately, he's still too weak. I would have loved to fight against him," he said with a rueful smile on his face. Just like the family head, he also felt he was too strong for Gray. Of course, he would have some difficulties when fighting against the people Gray was currently fighting against, but he would still come out victorious, comfortably. He wouldn't take as long as Gray while fighting against them. He looked at the platform and scoffed when he saw the body of the young man who passed out. After beating the young man out cold, Gray retreated to the side so his comrades could take him out of the platform and he would be attended to. 1 down, 3 to go. He looked at his opponents with his usual nonchalant eyes. Looking into his eyes, his opponents were a little afraid. For some reason, they couldn't help but wish they weren't fighting against him. Even with their numerical advantage, they still felt a bit inferior to him. Due to their strength, their attacks are more effective on Gray, which was normal, but Gray was very smart and had managed to always dodge a head-on confrontation with them. His wits had given him the edge he needed against them. At this rate, he wouldn't even need to boost his strength or anything to fight with them. Having multiple elements was also very useful to him since it made him versatile when fighting. He wouldn't need to fear when defending, attacking, and even dodging. He had it all. From the standpoint of others, Gray was actually the complete package. He had the space and lightning element for dodging or using skillful movement skills to close down on his opponents. Then the earth element was there to help him defend against attacks. As for firepower, his fire and lightning elements were there. Then there's also the uniqueness of the space element. Take for instance when he cut through the ice dome of the water elementalist. This wasn't something he could do with the other element since the defense of the water elementalist was on par with them. But the space element was a different issue. The remaining three figures exchanged glances. When they started the battle, they were confident that they could take Gray out. After all, with their numbers, they didn't need to fear him. But as it stands, they felt they made a mistake. Their demeanors changed and Gray could sense an aura of seriousness. They wanted to take the battle to its peak from now and eliminate Gray quickly. If they waited for too long, then Gray would most definitely defeat them one by one. Chapter 9:15. All three figures attacked Gray simultaneously, not wanting to give him the chance he wanted to take them out. The dual elementalist used the earth element to create a cube that vibrated, giving off a large amount of essence. The cube was floating behind him, and Gray guessed it was some type of skill similar to what Clouse did with the ice moon to increase his strength. The dual elementalist didn't stop there. With a wave of his hand, black tendrils shot at Gray, all made from the darkness element. Gray would naturally not want this to hit him. He wanted to dodge, but the two fire elementalists attacked at this point. One from the left, and the other from the right. The dual elementalist was attacking from the front. In a pincer attack, Gray was forced to either retreat back or take the attacks head-on. Most people felt he would want to dodge the attack since he had the space element, but Gray had another plan. He created a small inscription, hidden from the view of everyone. He stood above the inscription which was inscribed on the floor of the platform. With a smile on his face, he prepared to face the attacks head-on. When everyone saw the decision he made, they couldn't help but wonder if he was normal or not. A sensible decision would be to retreat to the back or even move forward. That way, all he had to focus on was to deal with the black tendrils coming his way. Standing in the same spot was making things difficult for him. Gray naturally didn't care what people thought of him. Luthra was a little worried when she saw this and her hold on Clouse's hand grew tighter, but looking at him, she gained some sort of confidence once again. Clouse, noticing her hold, turned to look at her and smiled. He already knew what Gray wanted to do. After watching Gray fight for so long, he knew this was the perfect time for him to use his special space element technique, switch. As long as Gray picked the right person, then he would be able to take out another person in a short time. And just as Clouse thought, Gray's figure blinked just when the attack was about to hit him, and the figure there changed to the young man who was a fire elementalist. Even though Gray had used this technique once before, they still didn't expect it, and the young man was hit by all three attacks. Luckily, his attack didn't do him much harm. He was tied by the black tendrils which started to corrode his elemental essence, while the attack of the other fire elementalist struck him. Just when he thought it was over, he felt a lightning bolt shoot out from the place where he was standing. It hit him in the nether region and sent him flying into the air as he screamed in pain. Everyone heard his horrific scream and the men in the area could help but feel a chill run down their spines. The area Gray's inscription attack hit was one of the most sensitive parts in a man's body, so it was natural that the pain the fire elementalist felt at the moment was beyond words. A burst of laughter came from the side. It was from none other than Clouse. Seeing this, he recalled his technique that became famous in the trial land, the Nutcracker. Although this was different from it, it had almost the same effect. This one could be said to be even more powerful since it was from an elemental attack. When the young man crashed to the ground, he couldn't even move. With both hands on his crotch, he started to shake and before long, passed out with foam coming out from his mouth. Gray had an awkward expression on his face since he never planned for something like this to happen. Hearing Clouse's peal of laughter made it even worse and he couldn't help but look down, a bit embarrassed. The eyes of the head of the Robertson family twitched when he saw the condition of the fire elementalist. Even for someone of his strength, that was a place he wouldn't want to be attacked. Gray had taken out another person. Although it was with an odd tactic, it was successful. The other fire elementalist was a young lady. When she saw the condition of her companion, she looked at Gray with hateful eyes. The dual elementalist on the other hand couldn't help but look at the ground, afraid Gray set another inscription on the floor. What was even worse was that none of them knew when Gray created the inscription, so it made him even more fearful. Without even thinking twice, he made pants with the earth element. When Gray saw this, his mouth twitched slightly. He only wanted to eliminate one of them. He never thought the fire elementalist would keep his legs wide open when he stood there. And with the way Gray was previously standing, the attack would have run through his leg, electrocuting him. Clouse, seeing the dual elementalist making pants with the earth element, couldn't contain his laughter and burst out laughing once again. This time, he wasn't the only one who found this funny. A few people chuckled at it, but because of the fear of not wanting to offend the Robertson family, they hid it quickly. Gray glanced at Clouse, and all he wanted to do at the moment was to pummel him. The fire elementalist who was still on the platform attacked Gray, who still had an awkward expression on. Gray turned his attention back to the fight in front of him. With a swift movement, he dodged the attack and moved closer to the young lady. She turned around and attacked. Gray could tell that she was clearly infuriated. He blocked her next attack with the help of a hand made from the earth element, before attacking with the fire element. The dual elementalist joined in on the battle as well, with his earth pants, of course. Everyone soon started to forget about what happened some time ago and focused on the fight, everyone except Clouse, who was laughing his head off at the dual elementalist fighting with earth pants. Chapter 9:16. Gray's figure flashed through the platform as his body was covered with red lightning while he attacked. The dual elementalist and fire elementalist were keeping him at bay. The ferocity of their attacks was currently above the last time. They attacked intending to take Gray out. When Gray tried to block an attack, he was forced back by it. This showed just how high the current attack power of the duo was. Luckily, with the help of his space and lightning element, he didn't really need to face all of their attacks. He could dispel any attack that came within a certain area of him with his space element. The dual elementalist acted as the support, while the fire elementalist was the main attacker. She was like a dormant beast that was released into the world to cause havoc. Everyone felt chills as they watched the battle. Even Clouse had stopped laughing. The battle was currently at its peak, and in a few minutes, the winner would be announced. He felt confident that Gray would win, but watching the fire elementalist's relentless attacks, he felt a bit worried. This was normal, since nothing was set in stone. Just as Gray had multiple trump cards and shock factors, so did other geniuses. They couldn't underestimate anyone. Of course, it would be almost impossible to see someone as special as Gray, but there are a few who were above normal geniuses as well. While fighting, Gray didn't dare to lose focus. He created an inscription, and after so long, he finally created an array to bolster his speed with the space element. Now, he could teleport at a faster pace. The dual elementalist was the calmest of the duo, and he assessed the situation with precision. He made sure the fire elementalist was never left alone with Gray. They knew for a fact that alone, Gray would beat them up within a matter of seconds. The two people who had been eliminated were a result of Gray's ingeniousness and strength. If they made a single mistake, they knew Gray would capitalize on it. Thinking up to this stage, the dual elementalist tried to make sure they were the ones in control of the battle. And since they started attacking him again, they had gotten a good hold on the battle. There had been a few times when Gray countered, but they made sure they didn't give him the chance to utilize his skills before forcing him to defend. The head of the Robertson family was impressed with their performance after they lost the fire elementalist. At this rate, he felt maybe they had some chance of defeating Gray. If they won, then he would be relieved since he managed to keep the reputation of his family. When Gray saw how difficult things were starting to get, even with his space element, the dual elementalist was making it hard for him to use it properly. The fire elementalist also attacked continuously, not stopping for a second. Looks like I'll have to use it now, he thought internally. He still hadn't used his domains, so he could still use them to change the tides of the battle. After coming to a conclusion, he decided to use his lightning domain first. His fire domain was stronger, so he wanted to keep it for later. When the dual elementalist was about to attack, he suddenly felt a sizzling sensation. Looking around, he noticed he was shrouded with lightning. It was as if he was standing in a sea of lightning. Everywhere he looked, all he saw was lightning. He didn't even have the time to react before he was zapped and hit by multiple lightning. With a yell, he tried to break free from the lightning domain. "Don't bother." He heard a voice behind him, and before he knew it, everything went black and his body fell to the ground. The sea of lightning went off and the unconscious body of the dual elementalist was on the ground. Everyone, including the top experts, stood up in shock when they saw the lightning sea. A domain, at such a young age, how? The head of the Robertson family couldn't keep calm. Gray had given him far too many surprises. Even after thinking highly of Gray, he realized he was still underestimating him. Gray was still in the third stage of the Sage Plane, yet he already had a domain. This was a shocking fact. If he were to know that Gray awakened his domain while he was still in the Overlord Plane, it was unknown what his reaction would be. Those from the Braun family looked at Gray, they sucked in a deep cold breath, bamboozled by Gray's abilities once again. Gray had awakened a domain, and he had been keeping it to himself all this while. Using it now showed how far the dual and fire elementalists pushed him. Luthra turned to look at Clouse, and to her surprise, she noticed that he had a stunned expression. "You don't know about him awakening his domain?" She couldn't help but ask. According to Clouse, he was very close with Gray, so if he didn't know of Gray's domain, it would be a shocking thing. "I know he has awakened a domain, even while he was still in the Overlord Plane, but it's not with his lightning element." Clouse replied with a low voice. "What?" Luthra exclaimed, attracting attention since she couldn't keep her voice down. Clouse shook his head with a wry smile. He only recently awakened his a few months ago. Reynolds, who was the closest to doing so, was still very close but hadn't. Alice was the only one who wasn't showing any signs of awakening hers anytime soon, yet Gray had awakened another. Even though they were friends, it was still a bit frustrating thinking about how far Gray was leaving them behind. This was one of the reasons he had been training with all seriousness. He even forgoes his usual playful lifestyle to make sure he grew faster, yet, even with his high luck, he still was behind Gray. Such a headache. He chuckled. He was happy for Gray, and now, he gained a new motivation to grow stronger and faster. He knew he would never catch up to Gray, but he wanted to make sure that Gray didn't leave him too far behind. Chapter 9:17. The fire elementalist was shocked. Before she could react, Gray was already standing before her. He wanted to use the opportunity that presented itself after he used his domain to take out the dual elementalist. Seeing Gray standing in front of her, she hastily reacted, attacking him. Gray blocked the attack coming his way, before countering. The fire elementalist tried to block the attack, but she was left open from her back, and Gray's inscription appeared behind her and attack. The fire attack slammed into her back, sending her flying in Gray's direction. Gray, who was already prepared for this, didn't delay as he attacked her with a lightning orb. The lightning orb exploded, sending her flying off the platform. Victory. Gray had gotten victory against 4 opponents that were each 2 stages above him. A shocking feat. At this rate, the crowd were all wondering where such a genius came from. Even the parents of Luthra were no longer calm. Yes, Gray wasn't the one who wanted to marry their daughter, but he was friends with the person who wanted to, and the fact that he was willing to fight against so many people alone for Clouse showed how close they were. Clouse and Luthra celebrated Gray's victory, a little relieved that they were getting closer to their aim. Looking at the people left in the queue, they couldn't help but gulp down their saliva, a little excited about what other surprises Gray had in store. They already knew of him having the fire domain, something that most of the people here weren't aware of. As long as Gray played his cards well, then victory wasn't out of sight. Clouse wasn't even bothered, since Gray already told him he would defeat everyone, then he would. There was no use thinking of how he could use it. As long as he defeated everyone, he was okay with the result. The head of the Robertson family nodded to the 2 6th-stage Sage Plane elementalists. He never thought it would get to this. When Gray first stepped on the platform, he thought maybe the first 2 people would be able to defeat him, but since the start of the battle till now, Gray had been giving him one surprise after another. The duo stood before Gray, Accessing him, they still found it odd that he managed to defeat the others, all by himself. "Your impressive run ends here," one of them with long black hair said coolly. Gray didn't reply, only setting his sight on the duo. They moved instantly, and he noticed one of them was surprisingly a light elementalist, and the other was a water elementalist. The light elementalist was naturally the faster one, so he was the first to attack Gray. Gray knew he couldn't compare to speed with a light elementalist in his current state, so he didn't even try to dodge since it might leave a way for the light elementalist to attack him. Instead, he utilized his gravitational force field, in hopes of slowing down the light elementalist. The light elementalist was taken by surprise, but he managed to quickly neutralize the effect in a matter of seconds and continued his attack on Gray. The time he slowed down gave Gray the opportunity he needed to set up a defensive wall, and also think of a counter. While the light elementalist was attacking, the water elementalist also attacked, but he didn't close the gap between them. He created a large octopus made of water, with multiple tentacles, and he sent the legs in Gray's direction. Just as the light elementalist attacked Gray, one of the tentacles grabbed Gray by the leg and with a tug, Gray was taken off his feet. Bang! The light elementalist attacked at this moment. The defensive wall Gray set up was basically useless since he had been dragged out of the place by the tentacle. Gray's figure slammed into the ground and bounced off. Before he could regain himself, the light elementalist was already beside him as he tried to kick him away. However, just as he was about to kick him, he felt a powerful repulsion force and it sent him flying away from where Gray was located. Even with the repulsive force that sent the light elementalist flying, the tentacle didn't leave him alone. Gray used the opportunity to stand on his feet before using a lightning sword to cut off the tentacle holding onto his leg. A second tentacle came his way after he cut off the first one, which had regenerated at this point. The light elementalist also attacked once again. Since the water elementalist was focused on controlling the octopus, he didn't bother to send another attack. Gray welcomed the incoming attacks with zeal and fervor. He had always been a battle lover, so now that a tough battle presented itself before him, he was a little bit excited. Boom! Bam! Bang! The battle quickly intensified. The duo fighting against him had good chemistry, so they were able to force him into a tight spot. Although he was fighting against two people, he had to admit that this battle was tougher than the previous one. The light elementalist was using his speed to cancel his space element, which was his fastest means of movement. Not just that, but he was also ensuring that he was not in the space area with the water elementalist. This way, Gray would not be able to use his switch skill. After watching Gray fight, they started to create some preventive measures before they stepped on the platform. The only reason the light elementalist was getting close to Gray was that he didn't want him to set his eyes on the water elementalist. With the manner in which he was attacking Gray, it would be almost impossible for Gray to get close to the water elementalist. Things were going smooth for them, but his facial expression suddenly changed when he noticed a change in Gray's attack pattern. Gray, who had been fighting with his elements all these while, suddenly brought out a short sword and threw it in the direction of the water elementalist. If it was any other person, he would have said it was due to frustration, but Gray was different. While thinking of this, his pupils shrunk when Gray's figure suddenly vanished, appearing on the spot where the sword was, with the sword in his hand and a powerful orb at the tip of the sword which was pointed at the water elementalist. Chapter 9:18. Gray appearing in front of the water elementalist, holding onto the sword he threw, came as a shock to the crowd. What they didn't know was that Gray marked the sword before throwing it. It looked like an act of desperation on the outside, but it was a well-thought-out plan he came up with when he couldn't find a way through the light elementalist who was making life difficult for him. When he appeared, he instantly used his lightning domain. Before releasing the orb that was compressed to a very tiny orb. It contained shocking power, even though it was around 1/3 of its normal size. The orb that was made from the fire element exploded in the lightning domain, with the water elementalist in it. The blue and silver color of the two elements gave the crowd a beautiful sight to behold. It was beautifully dangerous. The light elementalist tried to come into the scene, but he was a tad too slow in reacting, and Gray had already used both attacks. Gray turned to look at him with a smile. When the explosion died down, an ice dome stood in front of everyone, proudly and untouched. Gray's smile froze when he saw this, but he didn't think too much of it. With a wave of the sword in his hand, the ice dome, which stood proudly a few moments ago, came crashing down, and the body of the water elementalist was inside. Everyone could tell that he was suffering from burns, and he was currently vibrating, an effect of electrocution. Gray hastily covered his body with the earth element. This way, there was no way the light elementalist would be able to rescue him. After Gray took the body of the water elementalist who was still shaking, the light elementalist arrived and attacked. Gray was naturally never going to let him heal the water elementalist. Without the water elementalist, Gray could focus on the light elementalist. He retreated, moving away from where the light elementalist was standing. He brought out 5 more swords and threw them in 5 different directions. Each sword sank into the edge of the platform, while he stuck the last one in his hand in the middle of the platform. All 6 swords were marked, so at the moment, he could change his location almost instantaneously. With the body of the water elementalist still with him, he teleported to where one of the swords was implanted on the platform and struck the body of the water elementalist with a lightning attack. The water elementalist shook before his eyes rolled back and he passed out. Gray had eliminated one of the 2 6th stage elementalists, while still in the 3rd stage of the Sage Plane. The move he used was a unique skill since it was something most of the people there had never seen. Only a few had heard of it. It was also a very difficult move to pull off with the space element and could be regarded on the same level as the move he used previously to phase through an attack. Learning one of these moves could already make a space elementalist a fearsome individual. The fact that Gray had managed to learn both at such a young age was shocking to them. The top experts there knew each of the swords Gray threw out carried the aura of the space element. Only the person who marked it could teleport to where it was located. The light elementalist, seeing Gray take out the water elementalist, paused. He knew fighting against Gray on his own would be difficult. Gray had been using his inscriptions so far, and even then, the duo had been able to fight against him, but now that he had to fight against only one of them, he wouldn't have any problems with attacking and defending against the light elementalist. The light elementalist rushed after Gray and tried to attack. Gray didn't waste any time standing in one spot. He teleported to where one of the swords was and attacked the light elementalist from where he was standing. He also created 2 inscriptions made from his fire and lightning elements. He released his gravitational force field across the entire platform. Although the larger the distance it had to cover, the lower its effect, he didn't really mind. The light elementalist and Gray exchanged blows with none of them coming out on top. Gray was faster now, so he dodged every single attack that the light elementalist sent his way. The same can't be said for the light elementalist since Gray was attacking with both his inscriptions and also sending out attacks on his own. The light elementalist soon noticed Gray was teleporting at such speed with the help of the swords. After thinking about it, he rushed over to the sword in the middle of the platform and kicked it off. Just as the sword went airborne, Gray appeared beside him with a wide smile. The gravitational force field drew closer, and the force in it increased with it. The light elementalist tried to escape, but it was impossible, given Gray's speed of action. Gray used the lightning domain once again. The gravitational force field and the lightning domain were what he needed to complete the battle. It took him almost 10 minutes to fight against the 2 6th stage Sage Plane elementalists, but he succeeded, against all odds. Everyone already felt Gray had lost when the duo in the 6th stage of the Sage Plane stepped on the platform. And when they started to dominate him at the start of the battle, they all felt their assumptions were right. However, Gray turned the tides of the battle with another shocking skill. The crowd didn't know how many times he had shocked them since the start of the battle, but they knew they were almost starting to go numb from it. They all turned to look at Tius, who had a stunned expression on his face. Everyone from the Robertson family couldn't believe Gray was single-handedly beating their geniuses, and he wasn't even resting after each fight. Chapter 9:19. Is he really going to succeed? Luthera held onto Clouse' hand, nervous from the fact that Gray had fought off everyone, with the exception of Tius. After Clouse lost, and they all heard Gregory's request, she gave up all hope. The fact that Clouse didn't allow Gray to join him when Gregory asked him annoyed her a little. She felt if Gray was with him during that battle, they would have won the first round. If they won the first round, then they would have been able to put the pressure on those from the Robertson family. However, Clouse let his pride get the better of him and he didn't allow Gray to fight, opting to fight alone. After he lost, he placed so much pressure on Gray's shoulder, and now Gray has to fight off against so many people alone. When Clouse told her that Gray would be successful, she didn't think much of it since she didn't believe it. She just felt Clouse was saying that to make her feel better. Gray went on to win his first battle quite easily, to her surprise, the second and third as well. After he defeated the duo in the 6th stage of the Sage Plane, she started to see some glimpses of light. Maybe Clouse wasn't wrong from the start and truly believed his friend will be able to defeat them on his own. Now that he was about to fight against Tius, who was the greatest genius in the Robertson family under the elemental venerable plane, she didn't feel as pressured as before. In fact, she was excited, waiting to see the reactions on the faces of those from the Robertson family when Gray beat up Tius. Clouse looked at her with a smile. "I told you, didn't I? He will defeat them all. He's Gray, and I can't put my life in his hands. He will never disappoint me. But honestly though, is he really human? I find that hard to accept." Luthra couldn't help but say. "Ha ha, I said that the first time he started to show this monstrous ability of his." Clouse laughed when he heard her question. Everyone close to Gray always felt like this, so it was quite normal. Tius didn't wait to get the nod from the head of the Robertson family as he stood up and walked over to the platform alone. His figure was quite big. He was around 26 years old. When he stepped on the platform, his eyes didn't leave Gray for one bit. Looking into the eyes of the youth who had seemingly demolished the pride of his family, he couldn't keep calm. Tius was a pure earth elementalist, and he used his earth element from the start of the battle. He covered himself with earth armor before charging at Gray, who was prepared for his fight against him. Gray knew from the start that he was not his match with his current strength, but he wanted to see how far he could go against someone in the 7th stage of the Sage Plane without boosting his strength. When he tried to block Tius' attack, he was stunned when he was pushed back. From the very first attack, the difference in strength was clear for all to see. The two of them were not on equal footing. Gray's battle with the duo in the 6th stage already showed that in terms of attack power, he was behind them. However, he made up for that with his versatility. Even when his strength wasn't on the same level as the duo, he managed to fight them off with his brain and experience. Tius had the advantage, and after pushing Gray back, he continued his attack with a large earth hammer. Gray dodged the attack, but the impact of the attack after slamming into the platform sent off a vibration across the entire platform. Gray, who was hiding in his spatial tunnel, was forced out, crashing into the ground. Tius continued his attack, not giving him any chance. He wanted to dominate Gray in his victory and return the glory of the Robertson family in grand style. Yes, defeating Gray wasn't any major achievement for him, but it would help his family, so he had to do it. Clouse and Luthra watched on, a little worried. To be honest, they had every reason to. Tius was dominating Gray, not even giving him the chance to even attack. Since Tius stepped on the platform, Gray hadn't been able to send out one attack. The battle continued, and in 1 minute, Tius completely dominated Gray. Gray tried to use his inscriptions, but Tius found a way to almost extinguish them almost instantaneously. His domain didn't do much work against Tius. After some time, he decided to use the fire domain. It was stronger and might be his only hope of defeating Tius at the moment. When the opportunity presented itself, the platform was soon covered with a sea of blue flames. Tius never expected this, and the heat from the flame was above Gray's previous attacks. Ooh? He has another domain? This was his first reaction, and when he studied it properly, he knew he was right. Gray had a second domain. The entire crowd was thrown into an uproar when they saw this. Even some multi-elementalists at the elemental venerable plane didn't have two domains, yet Gray already had two, and he was still in the Sage Plane. No doubt he was the greatest genius they had seen or even heard of. Lothar was once again thrown off his feet. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A genius in the Sage plane having 2 domains already. It was a piece of shocking news for them. Luthra looked at it in awe. Clouse already told her of this, but she still found it shocking when she saw it. This was not something she could believe, even when seeing it with her 2 eyes. The head of the Robertson family felt his headache. Gray was just too much. At this point, he didn't feel too relaxed. There's a big chance that Gray might be able to create another miracle once again. Just seeing him use 2 domains in one day was a miracle on its own. If he managed to defeat Tius, it wouldn't be too shocking. Tius' Earth armor started to show signs of breaking off for the first time since he stepped on the platform. He couldn't believe Gray was actually able to use 2 domains. He reinforced his armor and attacked Gray. Gray, with the help of his fire domain, started to attack. For the first time, he had a short period where he attacked Tius without fear. Tius' Earth armor soon fell apart after Gray sent a fireball slamming into it. When the Earth armor fell to the ground, Tius felt the full brunt of the heat. Without hesitation, he used an Earth technique that not only covered where he was standing but the entire platform. The effect of Gray's domain was almost completely put to an end. The power difference between the duo was massive, so even if Gray had a domain, he could still use his pure overpowering strength to stop it. When Gray saw this, he couldn't help but shake his head. With his current strength, he was not a match for a genius in the 7th stage of the Sage plane. One like Tius was even harder to fight against since he had a terrifying defense. When Tius put a stop to his fire domain, he looked at Gray with an apprehensive look. He wasn't afraid, but he didn't dare to be careless any longer. If not for his ability, he would have lost the battle in a matter of seconds after dominating it for so long. His offense increased in intensity and he started to show why he was one of the strongest among his peers. Gray found it hard to defend when fighting against him and was bashed from left to right. However, he didn't give up. He still had a trump card to use to boost his strength. Luckily, before the battle started, he asked Gregory if he could use a special technique to boost his strength, and Gregory nodded. Seeing that things were going out of hand, Luthra couldn't help but look at Clouse, who was gritting his teeth. She could see anger in his eyes. "Tell him to give up, it's okay," she encouraged. "I'm not upset that he's being beaten up, I'm upset that the moron hasn't used his trump card to end this battle," Clouse said angrily. "Eh?" Luthra was taken aback by Clouse's statement. "He can boost his strength, he asked Gregory about it before. I'm annoyed he hadn't used it till now. Such a moron," Clouse complained as he watched Gray get beat up. Honestly, he was annoyed that Gray had to go through this, but what made him more annoyed was the fact that he wasn't the one beating Gray up. Chapter 9:20. "So there's a chance he can win?" Luthra asked, slightly hopeful. "He will win, it's not a matter of probability," Clouse said with confidence. Luthra heaved a sigh of relief and turned to look at Gray, who was standing on the edge of the platform, breathing heavily. Gray looked at Tius, who was looking at him from the middle of the platform. Tius hadn't given him any chance to attack properly. Even with his insane battle experience and techniques, he was completely overwhelmed by Tius' strength. "Looks like I have no other option," he thought to himself. After coming to the conclusion, he took a deep breath to stabilize himself before his aura started to increase before everyone's eyes. It shot past the 3rd stage to the 4th, 5th, and finally halted in the 6th stage. Gray originally wanted to take it to the peak of the Sage plane, but after giving it some thought, he decided against it. Doing so would show these people his greatest trump card. In the 6th stage, he was confident in his abilities to defeat Tius. When Tius sensed Gray's aura increasing, his expression changed and he couldn't help but look at the elder in charge of the battle. He knew for a fact that if Gray was only a single stage below him, his chances of winning would reduce by a lot and Gray might just be the favorite to win. Gray attacked with renewed vigor. All his wounds from the battering he took from Tius were healed up. He unleashed a fireball, mixed with a lightning element at Tius. Tius set up a defensive wall to block the attack, but to his surprise, after one hit, the wall crumbled to the ground. He took some steps back from the impact and took a quick look at Gray, clearly shocked by the strength of his attack. However, his vision blurred as a figure rushed up to him and attacked. Gray threw his fist, which was covered in flames, at Tius' chest. The earth armor Tius had on protected him from the attack, but he felt his innards shake from the impact of the punch and was sent flying back. From the spot where Gray punched, the armor started to fall piece by piece. The head of the Robertson family stood up when he saw this and looked in the direction of the elder in charge of the battle. Use of special techniques to boost strength is prohibited from these battles. For that, he should be disqualified. Actually, it isn't. The elder from the Braun family presiding over the battle stepped forward. Your son placed the rules, and he agreed to this as well. The elder explained, glancing at Gregory. Sensing everyone's gaze on him, Gregory wished the ground should open up and swallow him. When Gray asked him at the start, he agreed to it offhandedly since he didn't feel Gray would come this far, even with increased strength. They could all see that Gray took the advantage in the battle from his very first move after increasing his strength. This was something that could have been avoided if he wasn't allowed to boost his strength. The head of the Robertson family turned to look at Gregory, disappointment evident in his eyes. While all these were going on, Gray didn't bother to stop the battle. His figure flashed through the platform as he attacked with his lightning element. Tius focused on defending. Whenever one of his defenses was broken down, he would set up another one. 2 inscriptions appeared in the sky and started to attack Tius, alongside Gray. Boom! One of the attacks finally landed on Tius and sent him flying. He crashed on the platform, bouncing off a couple of times before finally coming to a stop. Gray moved closer to finish off the battle, but when he placed his leg on the ground around 2 meters away from Tius, a large earth spike sprang up from the ground, forcing him back. Before he could regain himself, Tius was already on his feet, prepared for Gray's next onslaught of attacks. Gray vanished, and when he appeared on Tius' left, he attacked. After attacking, he vanished once again, appearing in front of him and attacking. His transition was so smooth and fast that before the first attack hit, the next one was already on its way. Tius blocked the attacks but was pushed back. While staggering back, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Without waiting, he jumped to the left and an attack shot out from the ground. Gray used the earth element to create a hammer that he tried to use to slam Tius to the ground while he was mid-air. Tius was fast and covered himself with an earth dome. This not only protected him, but it also gave him a little time to adjust his head. The hammer hit the dome, sending it to the ground. Gray moved close and used the fire element to try to burn away the earth protecting Tius. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unsuccessful. A lightning bolt fell from the sky and struck the dome, but it still didn't budge, to the annoyance of Gray. When he was about to attack again, he noticed a spear made from the earth element coming his way. The distance between himself and the dome. Just when the spear was about to hit him, it suddenly passed through. It was just like when he was attacked the previous time. He phased through the attack effortlessly. After going through the attack, he created a small lightning and fire orb and sent it at Tius, who was still covered with the earth dome. The attack crashed into the earth dome, causing a large explosion in the process. From the moment Gray increased his strength till now, he had overpowered Tius. One has to know that he was still a stage below Tius, yet he was beating him up with such ease. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The Silent Raptor's out.